I'm drawing infinite cards in Marvel. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 176, The Long Lost Card Draw. That's right, it has almost eternal life, mysterious abilities, and has the rights, fame, and wealth of the entire planet of Sokka. The Grandmaster is simply the deified version of the Earth Emperor of planet Sokka. A companion is like a tiger. The Grandmaster may make friends with any creature, but it all depends on his mood. If it can make him feel better, then we are good friends. If it makes him feel bad, then I'm sorry. If you want to live a stable and peaceful life in Sokka, it's best not to get to know the Grandmaster, Unli emphasized her tone, which was a bit of a warning. I don't mean to get in touch with the Grandmaster. Kyle shrugged, poured himself a glass of alien wine gracefully, and said slowly, I'm interested in the challengers in the duel field. Challenger? Henry was surprised. Yes, in the warm-up match just now, there was a challenger who advanced to the semifinals, a bit like a friend of mine, Kyle said calmly, taking a sip of his wine. This is going to be difficult, Henry said with a frown. If it was before this, maybe you could buy the guards of the underground prison with money and exchange them with slaves. But the challengers who advance to the semifinals will all be crowned champions 3 days later. After the Grandmaster's visual confirmation, no guard dared to release no matter how much money was spent. What if it's just a meeting? Kyle asked. That's not a problem, Henley smiled slightly, and said confidently, I know a prison guard, and he can arrange for you to meet the challenger. That's really helpful. Kyle smiled. For this, Unli's pink face smiled like a flower, and said softly, You're welcome. After all, you are my important customer. You must take good care of any business in the future. There's business, but I don't know if you are interested, Kyle said after drinking red wine. Unli winked playfully, and joked, Don't talk about the ones below a million. That's really low. Kyle smiled, his eyes flickered, and he said seriously, What I'm talking about with you is a cooperation transaction of more than 10 million. More than 10 million? Unli's expression was full of astonishment when she heard this. She was choking on the wine and coughed continuously, which attracted strange looks from Bibo and Zyode. Taking a deep breath, Enli calmed down, stared at Kyle tremblingly and asked, Are you sure? You don't want to buy a high-end and luxurious spaceship? Spaceship? Kyle touched his chin, calmly accepted the suggestion and said, By the way, we need to buy a spaceship, as long as it is not the Asaprotus who owns the Rainbow Bridge. Anyone who moves in the galaxy of the universe needs the basic means of transportation of the interstellar spaceship. But the transaction of more than, million yuan I told you is not referring to the spaceship. Kyle shook his head and said. Then what do you want to buy? Unli said confidently, whether it's the black market or the exchange channel, I have everything, and I guarantee you will be satisfied. What I want to buy is a bit indescribable. After that, I will ask Babo to give you a list, and you can collect and deliver according to the conditions on the list. As Kyle said, he put his hand into the pocket of the leather jacket. Under the surprised gaze of Enli's big eyes, he took out an energy crystal that was wrapped in a metal block and glowed with light white and blue luster, and pushed it forward on the dining table for 2 push. Krypton gold. Unli stared straight at the energy crystal in front of her eyes, not caring about maintaining elegance. She swallowed her saliva out of composure, and then covered her hands in shock. She looked around cautiously, and when she saw that the aliens dining around didn't pay attention, she rolled her eyes at Kyle, her voice trembling. This is 1,000 million. You just carry it with you casually like this, can't you? This will be considered as half of the deposit. Kyle smiled. Not only Krypton gold, but also a lot of things, card space, that he carries with him. 1,000 million, you just paid me in advance so carelessly. Aren't you afraid that I will hack you? Unli asked doubtfully. Hack me? This doesn't exist. Or, you can try. Kyle raised the corner of his mouth, revealing a sinister and cold smile. Compared with Black, no one really can beat him. When he first came to Sokka, he had tried to be as gentle as possible. I'm just joking. Unli waved her hands in embarrassment, her heart still in turmoil. At that moment just now, from the perfect man in front of her, she felt a dangerous aura like a beast in the starry sky. Kyle thought about it and said, I have a lot of goods to buy. You can collect them in several batches. You can also choose one from me, including the spaceship. It doesn't matter if it is luxurious or not. The point is that the performance is superior enough to pass through unstable space wormholes, for long-distance voyages between the universe and the stars, and Lee nodded, and asked in a slightly unnatural tone, "Do you want to leave planet Sokka?" "I don't have that idea yet, but I'm not an original resident here. One day, I will leave here. My family is still waiting for me." Speaking of the last sentence, Kyle couldn't help clenching his fists. As always, Tishi's heart also softened. The Earth is his home. I understand. Before my parents died, they often chanted the name of their home planet. How unwilling. If I have a chance in the future, I might risk my life to leave here and bring the remains of my parents back to my home planet. As Lee spoke, the sadness on her face subsided. She put the Krypton gold in her bag, and said firmly, "Leave it to me." After reaching the negotiation on cooperation matters, Kyle returned to the hotel, quickly prepared a complicated and cumbersome list of items, handed it to Bebo for sorting out, and then passed it to Lee. On the list of items, the priority is divided by price, from laser pistols to laser guns on the Rotten Street, as well as various high-tech auxiliary items. Anyway, you can buy whatever is cheap. The only restriction is, it needs to be in good condition. This is like recycling garbage, but what Kyle recycles is advanced and intact interstellar garbage. Not to mention Bebo, even Lee couldn't understand the shopping list at all, and didn't understand the use of Kyle recycling so many cheap and tasteless items. I don't understand. Lee still adheres to the principle of customer first. She doesn't ask too many questions, and her work efficiency is fast. On the second day, she sent the first batch of high-end items, garbage, worth millions, to Kyle. In the Outer City warehouse. After receiving the inspection information, Kyle immediately went to the warehouse in the Outer City alone. An underground warehouse in the Outer City. Kyle manipulated the button to open the smart door, and the inner sound sensing lights lit up, and the warehouse space was square, just a basement with a width of, square meters. Basement center, a pile of items derived from the high-tech civilization of the universe piled up like mountains, or laser guns that lost their energy, or alien watches that fixed local communications, etc. The grades of these items themselves are not low, but because they lose their own use value on this planet, they are reduced to high-level garbage that is tasteless to eat and discarded. For Kyle, these high-level garbage are treasures waiting for him to develop. Chapter 177. In a private warehouse in the Outer City. Kyle approached the pile of neatly arranged high-tech items, glanced, and suddenly hundreds of blue cards appeared in front of him. That's right, I didn't misunderstand the person. Kyle smiled lightly. Lee's work efficiency was quick and fast, and the goods she delivered were not mixed with water. As expected, she selected and purchased items according to the list he gave, and all of them were in good condition. Conditions: damaged items will have a high probability of falling, and it is difficult to grasp the accuracy. The shopping list he wrote included everything from rechargeable laser guns for alien battles to holographic projection communications for daily necessities. It doesn't matter what the recycled goods are, what matters is that the goods themselves are of high quality. Fortunately, the planet Sokka is a cosmic garbage dump. From time to time, there are large-scale garbage dumps from the advanced civilization planets of the Galactic Federation. The overall grade of commodities is more than one grade higher than that of the Earth that is still in the, century. On Earth, blue-grade items are cutting-edge high-tech products, but here, blue-grade items are just standard items on the side street. Start drawing cards. Kyle's mind moved slightly, reading once every 3 seconds, converting the items in the warehouse into item cards, and storing them in the card space. Since World War II on Earth, there have been no new cards in the material card area for a long time. 10 minutes later, Kyle emptied all the items in the warehouse, closed his eyes, and his thoughts fell into the card space. In the vast and boundless white space, the white, green and blue cards are divided into 4 or 5 areas according to their categories and uses, like fireflies glowing and hovering in the air. It looks too cold and mixed. Kyle shook his head inside. The ultra-blue cards such as the Space Stone and the giant ancient dragon turtle were not on him, and the card space could not even see a trace of purple light. Even the rare blue-grade cards, Venom and Blue Eagle, are so close to death. Only the ability card, Super Soldier, is permanent, but now troubled by the countdown of genetic diseases. Even the cards also became more and more bleak. Thinking about it this way, it's really a bit of an illusion of a lonely old man. Kyle's mind turned into a self-deprecating smile. and came to the material card area. The alien item cards were all arranged in the air just now, waiting for him to process. Blue item cards, total quantity 268 pieces. It's time to exchange for some new cards. My luck is already bad enough, dare you give me the Emperor? Kyle gritted his teeth, his mind moved slightly, and more than 200 blue item cards soared into the sky. Sacrifice drawing card, blue grade, 26 consecutive draws, that's right, it's just continuous drawing, and what you play is heartbeat. Under Kyle's anxious and expectant eyes, all the cards in the material card area evaporated and disappeared. You sacrificed low voltage laser pistol, space protective suit, baby nursing auxiliary machine, transplantable mechanical eyeball, successful extraction. Congratulations on getting life added. Hearing the first sentence of the card drawing system, the corner of Kyle's mouth twitched. I'm about to die, and I'll add your size. The life extension card adds natural lifespan. All unnatural deaths and illnesses and injuries are not within the scope. It is not so much life extension, but life extension, which is useless to him now. However, the first life-enhancing card that was drawn made Kyle's eyes wide open, and he saw the dark purple light flickering and illuminating the entire card space. It turned out to be the rare, Life Plus, in purple, add life, increase the user's natural lifespan by 300 years purple rare ability card. Current status, can be used by others half to white for 3 months, green for 3 years, blue for 30 years, and purple for 300 years. Kyle couldn't help clutching his chest, heartache. Without genetic disease, he can borrow 500 more years from the sky. Ignoring his depression, the continuous draw was started by Jaiming Kara, rare blue, life, X5, small rocket backpack, vacuum toilet, black flame horse, Sen bean, wait, vacuum toilets, what kind of mess has been mixed in? But more than halfway through, he pulled out the familiar fairy beans, and Kyle knew that this wave was not a loss, and it was a bloody profit. Immortal bean, which can treat all serious injuries, as long as one breath is still alive. Eating can instantly restore people's state. It can be used as a trump card to save life. It's a pity that Xiandao is only effective for physical trauma, and serious physical illnesses are not included in this category, otherwise Monkey King would not have worried about mere heart disease. It's far away, and the card draw is still going on. Intergalactic communicator, high-tech aviation suit, sweeping machine, Krypton poet oil painting, sodium carbon steel metal block. Proficiency in the ancient language of God's domain, electronic energy shield, bronze cauldron, a little weak fire. The 26 consecutive draws are over, and 26 brand new cards are created from nothingness to existence, quietly suspended in the card space. Kyle's belief in carnation licked his lips, and he couldn't help but quickly read the new cards, first removing the ordinary cards. In addition to the life-enhancing card series, 3 blue rare cards were drawn this time. The real character has exploded. Kyle stretched out his hand and waved, and 3 cards came into his hand. Sen Bean was naturally one of them, and the other 2 were Black Flame Horse and a little weak fire seed. Black Flame Horse, a horse creature that can properly manipulate the flames in its body. Blue rare creature card. The horse-like creatures with ancient alien genes are tall and strong, with a dark red body and a tough outer skin that can ignore ordinary swords and guns, and can run in the air below 1,000 meters. The fastest running speed on the ground can reach twice the speed of sound, and it can be halved in the air. There is a unique energy in the body, and the hooves will keep releasing black high-temperature flames, and the running will instinctively step on the flames. Irritable and disobedient, disobedient to discipline, has a certain ability to attack, and does not want to be controlled by creatures other than recognized masters. Current status, summonable. Another superb mount, Kyle muttered to himself. From the creature card of the Black Flame Horse, he vaguely saw the shadow of the Blue Eagle. Certainly the 2 are both mount creatures, and there are essential differences. The Blue Eagle is more functional and good at high-altitude alert and enemy detection. The Black Flame Horse tends to be a fighting type, with its own flame treading or something, which is too conspicuous and attractive. This is a bit inconsistent with my low-key principle. Kyle touched his chin, and it was hard to imagine what kind of occasion would need to use a flame horse. Riding this creature out, without any suspense, it will instantly become the focus of the planet's creatures. Let's put it aside first, Kyle said to himself, divided the cards into the biological card area and stored them, and then slowly looked at the 3rd rare blue card. A weak spark, Kyle smiled the moment he saw the name of the card. The name of the card was weird and interesting, almost the same as the strange egg. However, when his eyes fell on the card introduction, his breathing suddenly became short, and his eyes were bright with a look of surprise. Chapter 178 Mechanical Life Weiss. A little weak tinder, a faint tinder star with mysterious energy blue rare item card. A mysterious ray of energy derived from the source of the universe. There is no category, and it has the extraordinary power to give life to the machine. After enough tinder energy completely permeates the machine, it will start to fuse with it, and the mechanical body will be able to evolve and transform, becoming a highly intelligent new mechanical life form, and possessing some kind of supernatural ability. The development direction of innate ability is related to the most primitive body of the machine. Current status, it can be materialized. Since the fire is too weak, it cannot be fused with medium and large machines, and can only be fused with small machine objects. Mind exited the card space. Kyle held the item card on his finger. His blue eyes sparkled. Can you give the machine the fire to evolve into a humanized intelligent creature, and create mechanical life, artificial intelligence? Howard has been chasing things for half his life, and got the concept of the future he gave, and coupled with Wakanda's advanced technological resources, he can only make a semi-intelligent system Butler, which is 10 years away from the formed super system artificial intelligence Jarvis. Thousands of miles. Not to mention mechanical life. It wasn't until the future Iron Man Tony and the Hulk Banner jointly perfected and derived the artificial intelligence system, and fused it with a steel suit weapon, that the real production success, Ultra, was achieved by mistake. Vision is an evolved version of the creature based on the essence of Ultron, plus vibration gold, mind gem, and the divine power of the Asa Proteus. With this weak fire, you can directly give a new life to the small machine. Kyle regained his senses and sighed. If Howard knew, he might cry. What should I use to carry this little fire? Kyle thought for a while, and quickly pulled out a card with some ideas. After the ready-made entity, there was a small and exquisite smartphone lying on the palm of his left hand. The smartphone is based on the Apple smartphone. After careful processing and transformation, it has a sense of fashion and technology. The metal shell glows with a cool luster, and there is an English logo of Stark Industries on the back. 2 or 3 years ago, Kyle took this mobile phone and became acquainted with Howard. Before leaving the Earth, Howard hurriedly remodeled it and left it for him as a souvenir. In Howard's words, the shell of this mobile phone is made of vibrating gold, and a small smart chip is transplanted inside. With the addition of Jarvis' voice program system, it is already a perfect masterpiece that he can achieve. Howard gave you your body, I gave you your inner soul. Kyle smiled lightly, his mind moved slightly, and the card materialized. The card held by the finger of his right hand disappeared spontaneously, turning into a wisp of light blue flame, faintly floating on the palm of his right hand. The flame flickered and dimmed, and seemed to be extinguished as soon as it was blown. Kyle raised his right hand, bringing the dim blue flame closer to the smartphone in his left hand. The flame seemed to be conscious, and consciously absorbed into the phone. The next moment, something miraculous happened. The fuselage of the smartphone is entangled with electric arcs, and then the metal shell and internal chips are mechanized and upgraded, quickly forming mechanical limbs, small heads, and even robotic facial features. In less than 5 seconds, a small mechanical creature stood firmly on the left palm with 2 feet, raised the mechanical hand humanely, and looked up and down at itself with electronic eyes. The mechanical creature looked up at Kyle, lowered its body neither humble nor overbearing, and bowed like a gentleman. Dear Master, thank you for giving me a new life. You are Jarvis. Kyle was a little surprised, because what the mechanical creature said was Jarvis's voice. A series of program data flickered in the eyes of the mechanical creature, and it came to a gentle theoretical statement. I am Jarvis, but not Jarvis. I am me, a unique new life created by the Master. I'm speechless. Kyle smiled. Ultron and Vision are also based on Jarvis, but they are all brand new individual lives biologically. It's kind of like a sibling. But the one in front of him can be called the ancestor of Jarvis in the future. Then what should I call you? Kyle pondered. I am your personal butler and entourage. You can call me Weesey. The posture of the mechanical life is very low, and the voice is gentle and powerful, which sounds very stable and comfortable. Weesey, transliterated in reverse in Chinese, is thinking, and this also reflects the human side of mechanical life. Weiss, I need to know your specific abilities and what kind of assistance you can bring to me. Kyle asked directly, who would be unreasonable and polite with his mobile phone. Weesey nodded, and the body shape transformed into a mechanized transformation, and it returned to the original mobile phone shape within half a second. The speaker sounded, "Tinder, let me have the ability to transform." As he said that, it switched and transformed into a pair of tactical glasses, a mechanical watch, and finally turned back into a mechanical figure. Limited to mechanical items that are about the same size as the main body, there are more. Kyle nodded. The basic ability of the formation is very good. After all, it is too revealing to carry a small robot on his body. Because the main body is a smartphone, I can manipulate radio waves, use radio waves to try to invade intelligent systems, instruments, etc. within the range, or use radio waves to conduct small-scale fine investigation. Weiss spread his hands, but couldn't see what it was doing. The voice-activated light in the underground warehouse where Kyle was located suddenly went out, and then turned on again. Transformation is a racial talent endowed by fire, and radio wave manipulation is a feature endowed by the phone itself. Besides, I have all the upgrade functions of the phone itself, Weiss spoke slowly, and controlled to turn off the lights in the warehouse again. The electronic eye was used as a projection lens, and the soft light emitted formed a holographic projection. The projected three-dimensional mirror image presents dozens of luminous smart software, including alarm clock, communication, timing, music, movie, search engine, etc., and there is a Q-shaped smiling face beside it. Very good. Kyle's eyes were full of surprises, which was enough to surprise him. It was originally thought that without supercomputers as the main body of information processing, the intelligence of mechanical creatures would be far less than that of Jarvis. Now it seems that the power of Tinder has completely improved and evolved the main body of the mobile phone. Usually, you can transform into a mechanical watch. When necessary, tactical goggles are also fine. Kyle thought about it and said that Tweezy's own mechanical physique is made of vibrating gold, which is protected by the property of vibrating gold. It is difficult to damage him. By the way, what do you usually need to eat? Kyle slapped his forehead, and his inertial thinking caused him to fail to treat Tweezy as a real creature for a while. As long as it's energy, solid or liquid will do. Tweezy's electronic eyes flickered, but it was humane with a sense of anticipation for food. Chapter 179 Mechas and Fighter Planes are the Romance of Men. Kyle left from the underground warehouse, and just walked out of the gate. He was surprised to find a combat-style small spaceship parked in front of the open space at some point. Similar to a fighter plane dedicated to combat, the fighter plane as a whole is like a steel falcon with open wings, lying on the ground mighty and domineering. No one will question its attack power and flight speed. Kyle was surprised. The door of the cabin was raised quickly, and Babo, covered in white hair, jumped down from the cabin, and he still yelled, "Mr. Kyle, you finally came out. Is there anything urgent?" Kyle asked. Before that, he didn't bring Babo to draw cards. The hostess only said that she has already arranged your matter, but the time is only limited to this afternoon, so I specially asked me to come and pick you up, Babo said with his arms outstretched. That matter, that's right. Hearing what Babo said, Kyle couldn't help showing a look of surprise, and remembered. Apart from cooperating with Enli to buy goods, the only thing he had to do was to meet the challenger. Let's go. Kyle walked towards the fighter plane, and Babo followed beside him slowly, noticing that there was an additional communication-specific electronic watch on his wrist, and said in surprise, "You are equipped with a communication watch?" "That's right." Kyle smiled lightly. "You should ask me to help you choose another one to buy. The items recovered by Enli are cheap, but the appearance and performance are not good enough," Babo suggested, indirectly indicating that the communication electronic watch worn by Kier was ordinary, and it was on the planet Sokka. The civilian style that even scavengers often equip is not worthy of his identity. Kyle couldn't help laughing, but didn't answer the conversation. Babo didn't notice that when it complained, the communication electronic watch screen on Kyle's wrist kept flashing and jumping a series of digital symbols. Entering the warplane spacecraft, the lights inside the cabin light up sequentially. Each has a main and co-pilot seat and 4 seats in the back row. The space in the cabin is enough to accommodate 10 people without being crowded. Being in this high-tech product, Kyle was full of technological atmosphere, thinking that he was in the Earth after the 21st century in a daze. This is a combat spaceship worth 800 million Sokka coins that receptionist Enli bought for you. This fighter plane is one of the top fighter planes that the Grandmaster once collected. Later, because the appearance was not gorgeous enough, it was shelved for internal processing. Only insiders like Enli can get it, Babo said, constantly using his claws to gently rub the advanced equipment inside the fighter plane. His eyes were full of longing and fascination, and his mouth almost drooled. Regardless of its configuration and performance, it has reached the top level of the advanced civilization of the universe. If there is any fighter on this planet that can pass through the Devil's Hole without damage, this must be one of them. With an excited expression, Bibo jumped onto the passenger seat, slapped his paw on the driver's seat, and urged, "Mr. Kyle, believe me, you will fall in love with this feeling after you try it." Kyle shrugged, and went forward to sit in the main driver's seat. The soft seat automatically adjusted to a suitable sitting posture, and the map and fighter information came into view on the projection screen. He fumbled left and right until he found the engine switch and pressed it, and the fighter floated with a slight tremor. Bibo fastened his seatbelt and put on his earphones. His face was a little strange. "By the way, I forgot to ask, Mr. Kyle, have you ever piloted a spaceship?" "No," Kyle replied very simply. Not to mention the spaceship, he didn't even pass the driver's license test. "Ah, then I will teach you slowly." Bibo showed a ray of joy inexplicably, thinking to himself, this is a good opportunity to express himself in front of Kyle, prove that you are not just a pet beast. "No need." Kyle glanced at Bibo beside him, concentrating on his thoughts. 3 seconds later, the rare green ability card, Starship Pilot Mastery, was successfully drawn. Under the gaze of Bibo's wide-eyed eyes, one moment, Kyle, who was still confused about the operation of various devices, the next moment, his fingers were extremely proficient in quickly tapping the screen, and holding the joystick to pull it up. The engine of the fighter plane roared, and blue flames and compressed jets suddenly burst out from the tail. Like a falcon, it disappeared in place with a whistling sound, leaving behind the turbulent air and strong wind. Wow! Under the sudden braking force, Bibo's small body was squeezed hard on the seat, almost breathless, and the building outside the driving window quickly and vaguely backed up. Kyle's face was calm, and the sense of speed in manipulating the fighter was inexplicably exciting. There is a saying that mechas and fighter jets are the romance of men. He vaguely understands now. It's a pity that the work of driving a fighter plane is still too troublesome. It is better to drive it automatically. "Weiss, are you there?" Kyle asked softly. Just as he finished speaking, the electronic watch on his left wrist flickered. "My master, I am at your disposal 24 hours a day." Weiss sends out radio waves, which are indirectly converted into audio by the earphones and transmitted to Kyle. Its tone is as friendly and easygoing as a butler, but its attitude is strict and serious. "Made me look like a villainous boss," Kyle complained secretly, and continued, "Try to hack into the computer system that occupies this fighter plane and control it remotely." Yes, the screen of the electronic watch flashed brightly, and after a series of numerical symbols passed by, the feedback message, the silent radio wave invasion failed. The alien computer system has never been recorded in the database, and the remote invasion operation cannot be performed. Then change it to field invasion and occupation, Kyle pondered. With many scientific professional ability cards in his body, he can be considered a half-scientist for the time being. Yes, the electronic watch deformed slightly, and then a long mechanical limb protruded from the side of the watch, and the front end simulated a metal plug, which was quickly inserted into a certain socket of the driving instrument. Bibo's paws firmly grabbed the seat, but he didn't notice that the projection screen of the fighter flickered for a while, and then returned to normal soon. Next to Kyle's ear, Weiss' report came from the headphone amplifier. The on-site login was successful. The Trojan horse virus dedicated to Weiss has been implanted, and the computer system of the fighter can be remotely controlled in the future. Then, full speed, Kyle left the pilot instrument with both hands. Weiss followed the control of the computer system. The fighter trembled gently, and the speed soared to another level. In less than a while, on the square of the Interstellar Stadium, Anli, who had been waiting for a long time, raised her head. Like a streamer of light, the fighter plane flew from the far end of the sky in the outer city to the front, and landed firmly in the center of the square. The cabin door opened, and Bibo staggered down from the cabin, muttering, "Mr. Kyle, please drive more slowly next time." Kyle didn't bother to pay attention to it, and walked straight to Anli after he got down. Anli bowed his head and led him to the Interstellar Stadium, telling him, "The guards only agreed to meet and talk through the underground prison, and it is limited to 5 minutes. 10 minutes is enough." Kyle nodded. As long as he could get close contact with a venom, let alone 5 minutes, 5 seconds would be enough. Chapter 180: The Maliciousness from the Massacre. Kyle asked Bibo to stay on the fighter plane, and Anli took him into the interstellar duel venue, but the passage was no longer the main entrance before. but a remote and unknown employee passage, leading directly to the underground prison. Walking to the door protected by the laser line, the two were immediately stopped by the Sokka guards holding laser guns. "Idlers, stop, take another step forward, and deal with it as violating the Sokka law set by the master." Kyle frowned slightly, and Anli quickly waved her hand, took out her ID card to indicate her intention. "I'm Anli, the receptionist of the replacement house, and this is Mr. Kyle. Before that, I talked to your head guard. He has given us permission to visit the Challenger." The Sokka guards looked at each other, and one of the older guards nodded and said coldly, "Wait a minute." He picked up the communication device, and after reporting in a low voice, his face softened a lot when he heard the order from the other side, and he said to Lee, "There is indeed such a thing, but the person who can go in and visit is limited to 1, and only 5 minutes. This time it was Lee's turn to frown, and just as she was about to continue to fight for conditions, Kyle interrupted her with a wave of his hand, and said slowly, "You stay outside and stay with Bibo." "That's good," Lee reluctantly agreed, taking a few steps back. "I'm the only one going in." Kyle stepped forward and said to the guards, "I will take you in, and you must not leave me for half a step, otherwise I have the right to kill you. In addition, you need to wear this during the visit." The guard took out a small device from his equipment pocket. Kyle recognized it at a glance. It was a neurotoxin control device. One end was connected to the human body. As long as the remote control button was pressed, even if the target was Thor, he would fall to the ground paralyzed. Seeing Kyle's hesitation, the older guard couldn't help but smiled bitterly and said, "Sir, it's broken the rules for the manager to allow you to visit the prison. Don't make it difficult for us." "No problem, let's pretend." Kyle nodded calmly, and then the elder guard approached, aiming the small neurotoxin device under his ear and hitting it. With a slight sound, the device was tightly attached to his neck. Kyle's face was expressionless, and he adjusted his collar slightly to cover up the glowing device. "Hold it." The elder guard handed over the controller to another guard, opened the laser protection door, and waved for Kyle to follow. Kyle glanced at the controller in the guard's hand for the last time, retracted his gaze flatly, and followed the older guard leading the way. Walking on the underground passage leading to the prison below, no one noticed that Kyle's left wrist was empty at this time, and the electronic watch he was wearing had long since disappeared. "Miss Anli, just wait outside first." The guard outside the laser protection door smiled and said to Anli. "Okay," Anli nodded her head lightly, and retreated outside, turning her head every 5 steps. For some reason, she felt an indescribable sense of unease. Maybe there are too many alien creatures dying here, which makes people feel pressure. Anli laughed at herself for being timid, took a deep breath, and completely left the gate of the underground prison. Not long after Anli left, the guard who was still standing outside the prison door put the controller in his pocket and quickly picked up the communication device. "Report to the supervisor, that person named Kyle has entered the dual-field prison." After the communication was dialed, the guard reported urgently. The other end of the communication device was silent for a while, and a hoarse and calm voice came, "Very well, continue to maintain communication, and add a few more guards in the prison." "No problem," the guard responded respectfully. At this time, on the top floor of the Interstellar Stadium, the Grandmaster visited the platform for the duel match on weekdays. In the luxurious and extravagant room, it was empty, only a middle-aged alien man with a blue dye of the high-level planet Sokka on his face, sitting on the mechanical seat with his legs crossed. The guard executive turned off the communication device with one hand, the veins on his forehead were bulging, and the other hand rested on the mechanical seat. With 5 fingers, he pressed it down suddenly. Violent and cold emotions appeared in his eyes, and even the pupils turned dark red, and he said hoarsely with anger, "Half a year, I thought that man would never come here again, but he appeared in front of my eyes again." As he spoke, a layer of dark liquid wrapped the head of the high-ranking guard, like a real devil's hood, and his facial features were continuously twisted and torn. The guard executive raised the hand, which formed a layer of tough cuticles. The palm was huge and the fingers were sharp. He picked up the steel glass on the table and laughed wantonly to suppress and disperse himself inner fear. "Venom. What you dare not do, I will kill you to do it for you. After all, we are one. Only by erasing that man from this world can we gain true freedom." Tuzuo snorted coldly. The steel glass bottle he pinched was almost cracked. He put it back on the table with a snap, picked up the windbreaker, put it on and left the room. The cracked glass bottle left trembled slightly, as if there was a mass of black liquid moving inside. like a living body tumbling violently, trying to break free from it, and quickly and powerlessly regained its calm. Inside the passage of the underground prison. The guard is in front, and Kyle is behind. In the passage that keeps going down, only the footsteps of the two sway in the passage. "Well, who is the challenger you want to visit?" The guard turned his head and asked curiously. "I don't know his name," Kyle thought for a while, and described, "It's the kid with tentacles who has advanced to the semifinals this time and is about to participate in the championship game." "Oh, so it was him." The guard nodded, but his face became strange, and he asked one more question. "That kid, who are you?" "Like a friend of mine," Kyle spoke succinctly, unwilling to reveal too much. The guard hesitated for a moment, then said, "It's strange to say that that child prisoner can be promoted to the semifinals," and even us guards were shocked. "Huh?" Kyle looked at him in surprise. "The child was arrested a month ago by a guard I knew. He was a thief from the outer city. Before entering the prison, he was almost beaten to death, and he has been lying sick in the prison. You said that he suddenly became so strong and made it to the top 4, isn't that surprising?" The guard chuckled gossipingly. "However, the starry sky in this universe is too big. There may be a fighting race whose strength increases after recovering from such a serious injury," the guard concluded with an open mind. Kyle listened, his eyes flickering. Of course, he knew the reason for the child's sudden strength. Naturally, the venom was symbiotic with it. But why did venom do this? Symbiosis on a seriously injured child? Who did it originally coexist with? "It's right in front," the guard said, pointing forward. The inner entrance of the prison can already be seen not far away. Kyle's footsteps suddenly stopped, his face was unprecedentedly dignified, and his muscles tensed slightly. "Not right, so wrong. The state has improved a bit, and the plot has begun to tighten up. I will try to restore the 3 chapters tomorrow. The old chapters will be returned to you." slowly. Chapter 181 Venom Betrays. In the dimly lit passage of the underground prison, Kyle frowned, keenly smelling something strange in the air. He is a war hero who has fought all the way since World War II on Earth, and he is so unique in his control of the battlefield situation. At this moment, he clearly felt the cold air in the air. Who is cheating him? "What's the matter? You don't feel well. Your visit time is only 5 minutes, and it's still counting now." Seeing Kyle stop, the guard couldn't help but turned around and urged. "It's okay." Kyle shook his head and walked forward slowly. He didn't feel any malice from the older guards. If this was a game, then maybe even the prison guards were pawns. It was buried too deep. Thinking about it carefully, Kyle has only been on the planet Sokka for a few days, and the people he even knows are by Bowen and Lee at best, and he doesn't have the time to offend anyone. Equipped with an all-in-one battle suit and dressed in a half-panther form, he destroyed an alien gang, let go of a night elf, and even circled the main city a few times with a guard spaceship, but that was all without revealing his true face. If the guards knew his identity, they would have arrested people in the whole city long ago, so why show off their conspiracy? After thinking about it, there is only one answer left, the most unbelievable and the most reasonable answer so far. Venom. Kyle stared at him, clenched his fists quietly, and chose to put aside his guesses first, and followed the guards to meet the challenger who was symbiotic with venom. It's not too late to come to a conclusion when we meet people. Coming out of the underground passage, the eyes suddenly opened up. Under the bright electric lights on the dome floor, the inner hall of the prison is spacious, but the floor is slightly dirty, and the air is filled with a slightly pungent mixed smell of blood and disinfectant. On both sides of the hall, the metal cages were filled with aliens wearing simple prison uniforms. When the guards brought Kyle to the hall, a pair of empty and cold eyes fell on Kyle. "Oh, there's a newcomer here. It's strange. Look at his clothes. It's actually an outsider. Anyone can come to this prison." Along with a whistle, the voices of many alien criminals continued to ring in the prison. "Give me peace of mind," the guard warned coldly, turned his head, and said slowly to Kyle, "Come with me. The top 4 finalists are all in the innermost, separate prison room." Kyle nodded and followed the guards all the way inside. When passing by one of the prison cages, a huge black shadow slammed outwards and slammed into the iron door fiercely, triggering the flickering lights of the protective door system, which flowed on the tough and smooth outer skin. The guard was startled, and almost fell to the ground in a panic, while Kyle turned his head coldly, and looked at him with 2 heads and 4 faint green vertical pupils at a distance of less than half a meter. Zizzy. The 2-headed snake's body was entangled with lighting, paralyzing and weakening its body. Even so, it remained indifferent, spitting out scarlet letter between its fangs, and staring at Kyle coldly with saliva, like looking at delicious food. Kyle was expressionless, showing no signs of timidity. Go a little further inside, let's go quickly. The guard slapped his chest with lingering fear, not daring to look at the terrifying cold-blooded monster. It wasn't until Kyle left the cage where the two-headed snake was held that the two-headed snake turned its lower body. It's interesting, in the single cell directly opposite, the sickle man licked his lips, and a pair of scimitar-like arms rubbed against each other, still shining coldly in the dimly lit cell. The guard stopped in the innermost cage of the underground prison. Kyle looked inside and could see the tentacle child sitting in the corner of the cage, wearing a paralyzing nerve device that glowed blue light on his limbs and neck. Standing outside the cage, Kyle was 5 meters away, unable to see the ability card on the tentacle child. The child didn't intend to move at all, so he just sat quietly in a daze without moving. That's how he is. Only in the dual field can he show such terrifying fighting power, the guard whispered. Can I go inside? Kyle asked the guard. Yes, but be careful. The guard took out the device, opened the door while manipulating it, and reminded, although we have put a detention device on him, you also know that its hidden tentacles are very powerful. I know. Kyle stepped into the cage immediately after the door opened, approaching the tentacle child step by step. 5 meters, 4 meters, 3 meters. The tentacle kid didn't respond, but at this time, Kyle had fully reached the distance where he could view the cards, stopped and thought: proficiency in Galaxy Alliance language, proficiency in stealing, proficiency in running. There were only a few, pitifully few cards that emerged, and none of them had a grade higher than green. This shows that the venom is no longer on the alien child in front of him. Otherwise, the existence of venom will be presented as a biocard message, and it can be withdrawn by entire recycling. Kyle was silent for a moment, looked at the child, and tried to say, "Do you know venom?" The child trembled all over, raised his head. His little face was weak and bloodless. He stared at Kyle blankly. His empty eyes gradually became clear, and he showed a strange smile. "You shouldn't have come." "What?" Kyle was stunned, staring at him. "You really know the venom? It left your body. Where did it go now?" "Yes, but it has another name now. When you come here, it's time for my work to end," the child said inexplicably, maintaining a strange smile, and his little face suddenly turned red. More than that, in Kyle's suspicious eyes, the child's thin and short body is like a deflated balloon that starts to inflate and expands rapidly. Damn it! Kyle's face turned aside. He turned and rushed out. He had just rushed to the door of the cage. The guard outside the door opened his mouth wide in shock, and in his field of vision, the child's body was reddened and swelled more than 3 times. Next moment. Boom! The huge self-explosion sound, like a thunder on the ground, shook the entire underground prison. The original cage in which the child was held was destroyed by the self-explosion. The child's bones were not left, and the dust containing the blood mist settled. Only Kyle was standing on the passage unscathed. The guards beside him were blown away by the explosion. On the wall, bloody and unconscious, fell to the ground. The prisoners in the prison did not know what happened. The warning lights in the prison kept flashing, and the loud and rapid sirens echoed forcefully. "If you find an intruder, please go to all the guards immediately." Repeat. "If you find an intruder, please go to all the guards immediately." Sure enough, it was a trap. Kyle scanned the messy cage. His handsome face splashed with a few drops of self-explosive blood, and his expression was gloomy and cold. Venom, what a betrayal. Chapter 182: The Battle in the Alien Prison. The fingers were clenched into fists, so that the nails pierced into the palm, and a faint tingling sensation was transmitted to Kyle's heart, which kept him awake enough. Everything in front of him undoubtedly showed that no matter how unbelievable it was, this was an undisputed fact. Only Venom, the symbiote who knew him from the inside out, could set up such a huge trap to trap him. Venom, Venom. Kyle's face remained calm as before, but his blue eyes seemed to be brewing some kind of storm. The veins on his forehead were slightly bulging, his steely muscles bulged to support his clothes, and his fists clenched tightly. Whitened and rattled anger. This is the first time Kyle has been so angry. Venom, is it praising its shrewdness when it grows up, or is it saying that it has become so stupid? Don't you know the consequences of betraying him? After being with him for so long, don't you have any points in your heart? The intruder is there. Catch him, we must not let him escape. With frequent and intensive footsteps and shouts, a group of more than a dozen alien guards holding laser guns rushed into the passage. and the leader pointed at Kyle, who was standing alone in the passage. "You guys, get out," the cold word spit out from his mouth. Kyle looked at the alien guard indifferently. His body moved suddenly, and the figure became blurred in the guard's sight. In the blink of an eye, Kyle rushed into the alien guards on his own initiative. The faces of the two alien guards in front changed drastically. Just as he was about to raise his laser gun to aim, Kyle stretched out his hands like lightning, and grabbed them respectively their arms. Kyle twisted hard, and there was a crisp bone-cracking sound, and the two alien guards immediately fell to the ground wailing, and the arms they were holding were twisted like twists. At the same time, Kyle kicked out his right foot suddenly, and kicked the guard, who fell on the ground as a ball with two consecutive kicks. Bang! Bang! The two guards were severely injured and lost consciousness. Their bodies were pierced through the air by the lasers of the teammates behind them. In the splash of blood, the remains of the corpses slammed into the team behind. The scene was bloody and chaotic for a while. Kyle didn't mean to stop at all. He was in a state of rage now, and just wanted to vent his anger. The prison guards who rushed up at this time could just bear his anger. He bounced and lunged, rushed in front of several other guards, charged his elbow for a short time, and quickly hit the chest of one of the guards. With 10 times the strength of a human being, and with his superb force technique, this blow undoubtedly, more than a ton of impact force has been irrigated. The guard spewed blood, his chest collapsed, his broken ribs protruded from his back, and he was tied to a guard behind him. All of them were thrown several meters away like kites with broken strings. In less than 5 seconds, most of the alien guards lost their ability to fight. Kyle's eyes were filled with cold light, and he stepped out with a stern and tyrannical aura. His boots landed on the wrist of a guard who was about to get up, and he crushed it hard. "Venom! How long are you hiding? Come out!" Ignoring the wailing of the guards, Kyle's powerful and cold voice echoed in the prison. Since the resources of Saka prison can be used so easily, and criminals can be symbiotically manipulated back and forth, such a situation is set up. At this time, the venom is mainly attached to the body used, and most of them are the guards of Saka. "If you don't come out, I'll find you out," Kyle said coldly, walking to the underground hall of the prison, and dozens of alien guards appeared in front of him again. Chi. The laser rays were dazzling and dazzling, sealing Kyle's body and his way out. Instead of retreating, Kyle switched steps quickly, stepped firmly on the wall, and burst into the guards with guns. He was like a tiger entering a herd of sheep, and the screams of the alien guards continued for a while. At this time, the entrance of the underground prison. "Master," the guard standing outside the door respectfully looked at the visitor and greeted him with a salute. "How's the situation inside?" Tuzuo asked calmly. The guard team guarding the prison duty has already entered. They also brought the remote control in, and they should be able to suppress it smoothly. Before the guard finished speaking, an angry voice echoed in the passageway inside the underground prison, and faintly spread to the ears of the two. "Venom, come out." During this period, it was also mixed with the tragic screams of the guards. The guard closed his mouth in embarrassment, but Tuzuo's face changed slightly, and his body and soul began to tremble. It was derived from the coercion and fear that was present at birth. From the inside out, the body and mind warned me not to violate that man, let alone make him an enemy. Notify the guard spaceship outside the prison to surround this area of the interstellar stadium, and the intruders must not be allowed to escape. Tuzuo patted the guard's arm as a sign of encouragement, then turned and left decisively. "Yes." The guard was stunned for a moment, watching the back of the carnage as if he had fled in despair. In the underground prison, the criminals in the cage looked at Kyle, who was guarded by dozens of enemies in the hall outside, and were dumbfounded and speechless. One word: fierce and brutal. "Tisk, two-headed monster, can you bear it?" On the other side, the man with the sickle grinned, mocked the double-headed snake in the opposite cage, and suddenly swung the knife in his hand. With a flash of the knife, he smoothly cut the iron bar of the prison gate into 2 pieces. The high-voltage electricity was transmitted to the man with the scythe along the knife in his hand. His body stiffened for a while, and then he walked out of the cage from the hole without incident. His body blurred and disappeared, but he rushed to the hall at supersonic speed. Seeing him leave, the two-headed snake straightened its upper body, and its 2 mouths showed its fangs, biting the door of the cage. It looked like a giant electric eel against the electric light. It twisted its body, the iron bars of the cage were pulled and deformed and twisted into a ball, and with its double head raised, it slid away quickly against the ground, devouring the corpses of the guards along the way. These monsters, in a separate cage, the six-eyed alien, the weakest of the top four, curled up and shivered. In the prison hall, Kyle has murderous intentions, and it is like a meat grinder returning to the battlefield of human wars. Even if there is no weapon in hand, the body is the strongest weapon for killing, and the guards wherever he passes are like wheat light being cut down to the ground. Seeing that the guards in the prison were wiped out again, a guard captain said majestically, "Intruder, stop. Kneel on the ground with your head in your hands." As if he didn't hear it, Kyle blasted the guard in front of him away with a punch. Looking up, he saw the captain of the guard standing at a safe distance of more than 10 meters away, holding a remote controller in his hand. "Don't force me to use extreme methods," the captain of the guard said coldly. Kyle walked towards him with a blank expression on his face. The captain of the guard suddenly became anxious, gritted his teeth and looked at him. "One more step forward, and I will." When he said the warning, Kyle had already taken 2 extra steps, and looking at the captain of the guard was like looking at a dead person. "You criminal, get down." After the guard captain finished speaking, he pressed down on the controller button with his thumb. But Kyle was fine, and continued to walk forward. The captain of the guard tried to press it a few more times, but there was still no response, until Kyle walked up to him, and then he knelt on the ground in horror. "Why? You should have a paralysis nerve control device on your body. Why didn't you respond?" "I untied it a long time ago," Kyle shrugged. "It's impossible. No one can unlock the control device by themselves." The captain of the guard opened his eyes and said bitterly, "Let's think about this after you die." Kyle expressed that he had no obligation to explain, arched his left knee, and violently hit the opponent's chin. The captain of the guard flew straight into the ceiling above his head, and half of his body was suspended from it. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 183: Carrying an Arsenal with You. 3 more subscriptions required. Once the nerve paralysis control device is attached to the human body, it will be connected with the skin and flesh, and it will be difficult to pull it out. If you want to pull it out with external force, it will also trigger the passive protection, releasing a neurotoxin that is enough to stun any life. This is also the last layer of control for the Socket planetary guards to detain criminals. It's a pity that this trick of bailing is not enough to face Kyle, who has a mechanical life with him. For Weiss, the energy stored in the neurotoxin device tastes good. Kyle pulled his collar. The neurotoxin device on his neck deformed slightly, stretched out a headset-like end, and reported, "Master, the radio waves have detected nearly 10 spaceships encircling this side, and it won't take long for this place to the area is fully blocked. Yes, let's leave here first. Anyway, the Venom can't dare to stay in the underground prison. Scan the building structure here to find a safe passage to the outside." Kyle suppressed the anger in his heart and ordered. "Yes, we see." Received it, spread it around with radio waves, penetrated the wall, and quickly performed calculations. In just 3 seconds, Kyle received a guidance message prompted by Weiss. He set off without hesitation, broke through the alien guards all the way, and entered an underground passage from the prison hall. Seeing that he couldn't stop Kyle, the vice captain of the guard let him enter the passage, and then said to the communicator in a hurry, "Hurry up and open the space corridor for me," and he must not be allowed to leave the underground prison. As soon as the words fell, the deputy captain of the guard suddenly opened his mouth wide in horror, and saw a man with a scythe with hunting wind pressure in the cage area, ignoring the guards, passing the hall in a flash, and also rushing into the passage that Kyle entered. "Scale up the manpower, and bring over the neurotoxin controller for Blade." Before he could finish speaking, the vice captain of the guard paused again, but it turned out to be a huge 2-headed snake monster. In the desperate exclamation of the guards, 2 bloody plates swallowed the snake's belly in one gulp, twisted and twisted. Sliding on the body of a snake, he chased after the man with the scythe. "Turn the neurotoxin controller of the 2-headed monster." The deputy captain of the guard shuddered in the middle of the sentence, and said hysterically, "No, go and invite the master. There are 3 monster-level fugitives. We completely resist, can't live." In the 3-meter-wide underground passage, Kyle was running around at high speed. "That's right, it's a circle." Kyle stopped suddenly, looked at the glowing ceiling and walls, as well as the bloody footprints left by himself, and said in surprise, "Weiss, have I walked through this for the 2nd time?" "Yes, You went around, Weiss replied. It's obviously a straight passage. How could it go around to the very beginning? Kyle felt even more strange. Weiss was silent, and after a few seconds, he gave a reasonable explanation. West Planet has a high-tech protection technology called a space corridor. After it is opened outside, the inner space will fall into an endless loop of connections, making the corridors inside creatures cannot escape. Isn't this going to be a fight between trapped beasts? Kyle thought for a while, and when he came up with an idea, his body turned into a cloud of black mist when he entered the stealth state. Stealth, Nightcrawler status, forced escape skills activated. Kyle muttered in his heart, his body flickered, and quickly disappeared from the passage. Half a second later, Kyle reappeared from the same place, frowned slightly as he looked at the passageway as before. Isn't it even possible to escape by force? This time, he was really helpless. It would be fine if the suspension ring was on him. Kyle raised his eyebrows irritably. Mirror world and portal spells are designed to overcome this fancy high-tech protection method. Tracing back to the source, I went back to the, boys of Venom. Venom, Kyle snorted coldly, anger ignited from his heart like a flame at this time. In a tempered glass bottle, a liquid like a ball of black stagnant water suddenly bubbling with chills, bumping into cracks on the inner wall of the glass, and the glass kept shaking and trembling. The water dripped through the stone, and the largest crack in the inner wall of the glass finally deepened and was about to crack. Right here, the door suddenly opened, and the black liquid in the cup quickly recovered from dormancy. Tuzuo strode into the room with a gloomy and uncertain face, picked up the glass bottle on the table with one hand, and put it back into the pocket of his windbreaker. This incident has already alarmed the Grandmaster. If a top 4 challenger dies, the Grandmaster will probably be furious. Tuzuo walked to the edge of the floor-to-ceiling windows of the platform and looked out at the wide dual field, as if he could see Kai, who was circling around in the underground passage through the floor. As long as you exist, I will be your shadow for the rest of my life. So, I'm sorry, please stop struggling here and end your life, and I will bring your body back to Earth, Tuzuo said hoarsely. Dry, as if responding to its words, Kyle in the underground passage is currently bombarding the wall of the passage corridor with his fist. Boom, bang, bang. Since there was no vibrating gold arm guard, Kyle only relied on his bare fists to hit the wall one after another. The smooth mirror-like walls continued to crack and extend, just like the liquid creature just now. Situation in a glass bottle. Master, according to the thickness of this wall, with the punches you are maintaining now, with the same frequency and strength, it will take about 26,405 minutes to completely break through. Weiss reminded Kyle indirectly with scientific data that fists alone cannot penetrate this place. Kyle had no choice but to withdraw his fist. He was just trying as for giving up. There is no such word in his life dictionary. By the way, the ammunition bomb stored in the card space is no less than an arsenal, so you can take it out and try it out. Kyle did whatever he wanted. With a slight movement of his mind, a bunch of item cards were drawn out, and they felt like playing cards. Shuffle cards in hand. Hydra laser tank. Kyle looked at this card, and quickly took it back with a slight sigh. This thing is strong, but it is too big, and the underground passage is not enough space to be summoned physically. Be Dynamite X10. Kyle waved his hand, and the 10 cards were summoned into packs of physical bombs, piled up on the outer wall of the passage. Before leaving the Earth, he didn't bring much other things with him. Except that there were a lot of unprocessed munitions during World War II, most of them were of white quality, and at best they were of green quality. It's all used. Kyle didn't feel distressed at all, and the entity that drew the cards summoned a pile of explosives, which filled an outer wall of the underground passage. Don't be afraid of waste, most afraid of not using it. After a moment, a dull and terrifying loud noise resounded through the underground passage, causing the entire underground prison to tremble like an earthquake. What happened again? There is no end. In the underground prison, the criminals in the cage and the guards outside the hall looked loveless. At the third watch, he did not break his promise. After being silent for more than half a month, I finally dared to speak weekly, asking for a monthly ticket and a reward at the end of next month. I hope that book friends who like this book will give more support, recommendation tickets, monthly tickets, rewards, and the daily 3 updates will continue for a long time. Chapter 184. Fighting Alien Creatures. The gravel and dust slowly settled down, and in the underground passage full of the smell of gunpowder, after enough bombs were blasted, a scorched and damaged hole appeared on the outer wall, and even the surrounding walls were covered crack. It seems to work. Kyle stepped forward again, shrugging. Yes. As long as there are 3 such powerful bombs superimposed, the outer wall of this corridor can be broken, Weiss agreed. That's easy. Clapping his palms, Kyle was about to continue drawing cards, when suddenly there was a sharp sound of breaking wind in the passage behind him, and a feeling of extreme danger came to his mind, which even caused a slight chill on the back of his neck. Almost instinctively, Kyle quickly lowered his head. Just as he made this reflexive movement, a silvery white knife light passed over his head dangerously, cutting off a few strands of hair. While avoiding the fatal blow, Kyle's face turned cold, and he counterattacked with his elbow to the enemy, and the elbow still fell into a cloud of air. The opponent actually slashed down at the speed of sound, and there was no backswing to stop, easily dodging his superb counterattack at close range. All of this happened in a blink of an eye, and with the eyes of ordinary people, it is only 3 times slower to see clearly that the two have completed a tentative game in an instant. What a speed! Kyle was shocked in his heart, his body muscles tensed as if he was facing an enemy. He turned around, his eyes swept back with a cold light. It was a man with 2 hands in the shape of a sickle who was promoted to one of the semifinals. As if he had found a good prey, he stared at Kyle with great interest, and said with a faint appreciation, "It's a good reaction to be able to escape my quick slash. You are indeed very powerful. Why did you do it to me?" Kyle asked coldly, inexplicably jumped out and slashed him. Usually, he would have lost his temper when encountering him, but now the most urgent thing is to get out first, and he doesn't want to be entangled here by the inexplicable challenger. Why? The weak eat the strong and the strong are king. This is the eternal law of the universe. There are so many reasons. The man with the scythe laughed straight. His long and narrow eyes showed a cruel and inhumane light. He raised his scythe and said, "I am the Blade Clan of the planet Z, and our race was born for fighting and beheading. I just came to Socket Planet. I will kill the heads of all creatures I see." He licked his lips and continued, "The ruler called Grandmaster said that as long as I can win the championship, he will forgive my sins, but who wants his forgiveness? As long as I can fight against powerful creatures, and it is enough to cut off the strong man's head and taste the strong man's blood, Master." There is no doubt that this is a perverted creature of the killing system. It attacks life without purpose, but only for its own pleasure, Weiss reminded Kyle in a low voice. "You don't need to tell me, I know it too." Kyle's face was indifferent, and he kept a high degree of vigilance on guard against a man with a scythe. Things got complicated. If you can behead your head, it should be a memorable event. The man with the sickle suddenly took a lunge forward, and the sickle in both hands slashed forward with a strong wind. Kyle had already prepared himself, and stepped on his steps nimbly to avoid it. The sickle fell on the wall behind him like a knife. The cutting of tofu leaves smooth groove marks. If the body of an ordinary person is hit by a blow, it will not die or be crippled. Even a super soldier with an extraordinary physique will have to cut off a piece of flesh alive. Kyle is not a gentle and weak character. Being provoked and attacked by alien creatures again and again, the originally restrained anger surged into his heart again. If you want to fight, fight. Kyle's eyes showed a cold light, and he stepped on the opponent's hand knife. Suddenly the man with the scythe pulled back, but underestimated Kyle's strength. The knife in his hand trembled slightly and loosened, but he didn't pull it back in time. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Kyle turned around and kicked the man with the scythe, flying hard, hitting the wall and floor of the passage and bouncing a few times, causing billowing dust waves. But soon, under Kyle's cold gaze, the man with the scythe scythed the ground with a knife in his hand and climbed up, with a few drops of bright red blood overflowing from the corner of his mouth. He grinned ferociously. "Sure enough, I didn't misread you. No, it's right, fight with me." Kyle ignored him, stretched out his hand to draw back, and quickly drew the card to materialize. 2 round black objects were thrown at the man with the scythe, and he took a few steps back quickly. "What is this?" The man with the sickle raised his eyes, subconsciously waved the sickle with both hands, and cut a thrown object in half. The next moment, 2 bursts of fire and explosive waves erupted in front of him. "Bastard! Come and fight me!" The scythe man's screams rang out horribly. "Who said that you want to fight a monster with 2 knives in close quarters? Aren't you very fast? Come and chase me." Kyle has a mocking mouth. Now he does not have the protection and defense of the venom coat and vibrating gold arm guards, the form of the venom suit and the means of attacking the sodium carbon steel sword, and he is born to fight with his bare hands when he is sick race of monsters to fight. Understand the gap in strength between each other, then rely on tools to make up for it. He thought about quickly drawing cards, high-explosive grenades, shrapnel grenades, etc., and threw them forward as if he didn't need money, sealing the passage space. All of a sudden, large and small explosions resounded continuously in the underground passage, mixed with the Scytheman's cries of anger and pain. The narrow underground passage greatly restricted its speed, and the grenade inside could exert an extraordinary effect, so it was impossible to hide anywhere. Baptized frequently by grenades and bombs, although the Sickle Man quickly avoided the most dangerous central bombing area every time, his hair was still scorched black, and his body was covered in blood and gunpowder. "I don't believe you can have so much ammunition on you." The man with the scythe gritted his teeth, raised the scythe that was no longer smooth again, quickened his pace angrily, and his body's speed exploded to supersonic speed. The wind blows away the thick gunpowder smoke in the area. Breaking out of the explosion area in the passage, the Sickle Man saw Kyle, who was standing in front of him, just filled with joy. He raised his sickle with both hands and was about to chop off, but when he saw the weapon in Kyle's hand clearly, his face suddenly changed color. "Don't mess with me," Kyle snorted coldly, held the laser machine in both hands, pulled the trigger, and several dazzling blue and white lasers shot out from the muzzle. The man with the sickle sped up to dodge. His body turned into a black shadow and became blurred, bouncing back and forth up and down, left and right in the passage. All the precise and predictive lasers rubbed against his body and missed. When the speed reaches above the speed of sound, it really has the meaning of restraining all attacks. "Try this." Kyle was expressionless, and kept shooting with a gun in one hand, forcing the opponent not to approach. He inserted his other hand into his pocket to draw a card. The jacket pocket looked a bit like a treasure bag, and he took out a black disc. Chapter 185 Double Kill. The Sickle Man's eyes were bloodshot, his anger was pent up in his chest and he couldn't release it. His spirit was still tense, and his speed was maximized, constantly dodging the laser shots from the sharpshooter. Where did he get the laser gun? The Sickle Man couldn't figure it out, and he didn't have time to think about it, because in the corner of his eyes, Kyle in front of him inexplicably took out a black disc from his body and threw it towards him. Another bomb. The man with the scythe gritted his teeth, leaped high, stepped on the outer wall, and bounced discs were much easier to dodge than lasers, whirling and skimming beneath his feet. Snapped. The black disc fell to the ground behind it, but did not explode. The man with the sickle was wondering, but in the next moment, an unexpected attraction pulled him down, causing his body, which had reached supersonic speed, to pause in the air and hit the wall by mistake. At this moment, Kyle took aim, pulled the trigger, and a dazzling laser blasted the man with the scythe completely. The screams echoed in the underground passage. The man with the sickle was completely pierced by the laser in his chest, and with a blood hole, he fell straight on the floor behind him, and the sticky blood quickly spread from the wound. His eyes were wide open, and he couldn't believe it until he died. He would die here in such a useless and depressed way. The vitality is too tenacious, and even the carpet-style ammunition bombing came through. Kyle let out a sigh, retracted the laser gun that had just run out of energy, leaned against the wall with a long sigh, and took out another similar disc, absorbed the piece on the ground back. In the end, the item in the winner's hand is a gravity magnet. This high-tech device can only double the gravity of the ground, and usually only has obvious effects on ordinary humans. But just now, in the battle between life and death against the enemy, the doubling of gravity undoubtedly played an unexpected role. Even the Scytheman with supersonic speed suffered a dark loss and became the last straw that overwhelmed the camel. Then, next, Kyle got up, but Weiss's warning sound suddenly sounded in his ears. Warning. There are huge creatures approaching quickly. Huge creature. Kyle frowned, finally relaxed a little body, and faced the front of the passage again tensely. With a slight tremor of the ground, a huge shadow quickly sprang out from the end of the passage, its body almost filling the space of the underground passage. Two snake-shaped heads were ferocious, spit out scarlet snake letters, and looked down at Kyle with vertical pupils. Giant two-headed snake. Are you coming too? Kyle raised his eyes not to be outdone, and confronted the two-headed snake coldly. After a battle, the coercion and momentum of his tired body did not lose at all. The championship game has not yet started, and there are two Final Four challengers. No, including the child who was once possessed by the venom, it counts as 3. The two-headed snake lowered its head, and the two pairs of eyes glanced at the corpse of the man with the scythe on the ground. Humanized mockery and contempt appeared in the snake's eyes, and his eyes turned to Kyle, as if looking at a dead person. Master. The interstellar venue above this underground prison has already sealed off the ground area by 20 guard spaceships. Weiss issued an early warning. That's easy, kill this monster, and we'll break out. Facing internal and external difficulties, Kyle was so calm that he didn't seem like a human being. He directly drew the card without concealing it, and a large laser gun appeared in his hand. When the two-headed snake saw the laser weapon, it cracked its fangs and smiled. It leaned back slightly, and before it showed any obvious intention to attack, its upper body was ejected like a spring. Bite it, Kyle. Kyle's face changed. He raised the laser gun and pulled the trigger without aiming. A laser shot through the mouth of one of the snake heads. Blood splattered everywhere. But the double-headed snake's offensive still didn't stop, but became more violent and crazy. The intact blood plate bit down fiercely. Seeing that there was nowhere to hide, Kyle quickly raised the gun in his hand with both hands, and stuck the intact blood plate vertically of Shekau. The two-headed snake let out a screaming roar, and closed its mouth forcefully. The large metal laser gun squeaked, and the barrel became bent under the terrifying bite force. Kyle held the gun in both hands, and his body was hanging outside the mouth of the double-headed snake. From a distance of less than 10 centimeters, he could clearly smell the stench inside the mouth of the blood plate. This monster actually wants to swallow me whole. Kyle was indifferent, watching the gun in his hand slowly bend, about to fail to catch the snake's mouth. He made a decision to let go of the gun, and took the initiative to step on it with both feet. For the lower jaw, place the palms of both hands against the upper jaw. 10 times as strong as human beings, under the explosion of tons of strength, the Shekau was slowly opened by Kyle with brute force. Give you something good to eat. With a slight movement of the mind, the item card was drawn out, and it turned into a physical high-explosive grenade and sank into the expanded Shekau. Boom! A few wisps of black smoke came out of its mouth, and the giant two-headed snake violently twisted its body in pain, crawling at an ever-increasing speed, scurrying around in the underground passage of space circulation. A monster of a monster. Kyle's scalp was numb, and he swallowed a high-explosive grenade directly. The alien double-headed snake was completely fine, but he just felt pain in his abdomen. Sis? Kyle's body was half-synced in the snake's mouth, and he used a body made of fine steel to forcibly resist the upper and lower jaws, but the two-headed snake seemed to have an idea suddenly, and suddenly hit the outer wall. His back hit the wall, and Kyle's body was completely plunged into the snake's mouth under the impact. At the same time, the bite force of the double-headed snake increased, slowly closing the blood plate's mouth and swallowing him alive. It's not that simple. Kyle held his breath, with the strength of his whole body supported on his limbs. His waist was as straight as a dragon, and he refused to bend at all. The fierce game battle between the two sides has become a tug-of-war of strength. The double-headed snake kept hitting the outer wall with its mouth. The outer wall was already overwhelmed by the continuous explosion of ammunition, and now it finally began to crumble. Kyle resisted desperately, but the discomfort in his body increased. His fatigue hit him like a tide, and his body's strength began to gradually weaken. Cooperating with the biting and devouring of the double-headed snake, the mouth of the snake began to take advantage and began to close. Damn it! Just at this time, Kyle opened his eyes wide. The weakening of the genetic disease came too suddenly, and his extraordinary physical ability would be temporarily lost. And right now, at the critical moment of life and death, once incapacitated, even if it is short-lived, it will be fatal. Master, don't give up. Weiss transformed back into a mechanical life, standing on Kyle's shoulders. His hands and limbs flickered with small electric lights, paralyzing Shekau, but it was obviously powerless. The mouth of the snake closed little by little, and when Kyle fell into the mouth of the mouth completely in darkness, he suddenly remembered an item in the card space. By the way, there's something like that. Kyle's mind quickly entered the card space, and quickly drew out an item card with a strong purple on. The card was suspended in the almost closed mouth of the snake, becoming the only light source in his eyes. Turned into reality, Kyle roared in his heart. The next moment, the purple card returned to a broken axe with a sharp slit. It was so heavy that it pierced into the snake's belly fiercely. With a stabbing sound, the broken axe penetrated smoothly to the end. Please leave a chapter. The law game is really fragrant. IGNB. Chapter 186. The choice given by the Grandmaster. Outside the interstellar duel arena, dozens of guard spaceships are suspended in the sky, and on the ground below the square, Teams of alien guards with high-tech equipment and fully armed forces surround a venue area in 3 circles outside and 3 circles inside. Be careful, there are blades and 2-headed monsters who escaped from prison. They are all powerful creatures that can defeat 100 with one. After the target appears, throw a voltage paralyzing net to catch it. The deputy head of the guard picked up the communicator and issued a serious order. The guards held their breath nervously, not daring to take a breath, and focused on maintaining a state of alert. Carnage, who was behind the guards, had a cold light in his eyes, and reminded in a deep voice, "There is another man named Kyle who is the culprit who caused the riot in the underground prison." Seeing that he does not need to be arrested, he directly opened the door. "Shoot and kill." "Yes," the deputy manager solemnly nodded, and was about to transmit this instruction to the communicator. At this moment, the ground where they were standing began to tremble violently. Amidst the exclamation of the guards, cracks burst into the ground somewhere in the stadium square. "Hold head high." Accompanied by the sharp and hoarse roar of the beast, the gravel and dust blasted from the cracks and swept away. A huge black figure suddenly crashed into the wall of the passageway below, violently and uncontrollably raised 2 heads. It's the 2-headed monster that appeared. "Prepare everything for me." The deputy chief raised his right hand, and the guards all focused their eyes on the huge black shadow not far away. But the next scene of change made them all open their mouths in astonishment. I saw that giant black figure standing up high in the center of the dust wave and screaming, then fell back abruptly and weakly, hitting the ground with a loud noise. This is how the same thing. The guards opened their mouths wide open for no apparent reason. The dust that obscured the sight gradually settled, and it was obvious that half of the body of the monster overlord, the double-headed snake, was still in the passageway below, while the upper body lay lifeless on the ground. When it was cut open, the body was almost broken in half, and blood flowed out from the torn gap like a spring. The guards shuddered as their eyes moved, and the massacre sitting in the rear showed an expression of horror and disbelief. On the head of the 2-headed snake corpse, a silver-haired young man stood on it covered in blood. Most of his clothes were torn, exposing his iron body. He straightened his back slowly, looking down with icy eyes. His domineering aura was like a demon god. "My God, he killed the 2-headed monster," the guards gasped in unison. More than that, look in the underground passage. Prompted by the horrified guards, the 2-headed snake smashed through the collapsed outer wall and saw the body of the man with the scythe with a bloody hole in his chest lying on the rubble in a tragic death. Has the 3 challengers who advanced to the semifinals been killed by the invaders before the championship game started, reminiscent of the tentacle child who died at the beginning of the underground prison riot? The guards at the scene felt their scalps go numb. Looking at Kyle, who was standing upright, his body felt cold everywhere, and instinctively took a step back out of fear. Being able to kill 3 monster-level creatures is undoubtedly a monster among monsters. But no one knows that this is the time when Kyle's body is weakest. The super soldier's ability is temporarily lost, coupled with the excessive physical consumption of continuous fighting. Now just any creature can knock him down. Life is like a play, it all depends on acting. Relying on the word hold on, Kyle struggled to maintain a steady posture, glanced around coldly with no expression on his face, and intimidated the guards and spaceships around him only by his aura. For a while, the square of the interstellar stadium fell into silence, and no guard dared to attack Kyle first. What are you waiting for? Give me a hand. So many people are still afraid of him. Tuzuo couldn't sit still, his body and soul were trembling with fear, and he gritted his teeth and said as he kept stepping back. Hearing this voice, Kyle raised his eyes passed through layers of alien guards, and fell on the massacre 20 meters away, with a little more understanding on his face. "Oh, so you are here?" Tuzu's face turned pale in an instant. It couldn't do anything to the man in front of it. It was flawed, it could only borrow other people's means. "As the supervisor, I order you to shoot me," Tuzuo growled. The guards finally woke up and pointed their laser guns at Kyle in the center of the siege. "Weiss, haven't the fighter planes come under remote control yet?" Kyle asked in a low voice. "Sorry, the fighter plane seems to be detained in a closed underground place, unable to break through and come here," Weiss quickly replied. "That's right. Then we can only forcibly break through." Kyle took a deep breath, and a biological card was quietly sandwiched between his fingers. Both Kyle and the guards were ready to take action. A small spaceship suddenly came towards the square from the direction of the central building. The exterior was graffitied with cool and bright dyes, and the disc-shaped fuselage blocked the sun and cast a large shadow. Not only did the many guard spaceships floating in the sky not intend to block them, but they also took the initiative to avoid them, allowing enough flying space and lowering their heights, as if they were afraid of taking the limelight from the small spaceship. "It's the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster is here," someone said, and then all the guards looked at the small spaceship respectfully. The small spaceship was suspended in the sky, and the Grandmaster himself had no intention of showing up, so he dispatched more than a dozen aircraft to project light together, presenting a three-dimensional holographic projection of himself. The huge projection of the Grandmaster looked down on Kyle, and Kyle looked up at him calmly. "Grandmaster, he broke into the underground prison and killed 3 Final Four challengers," Tuzu said loudly. "I see." The Grandmaster actually smiled, looked at Kyle, applauded and said, "Intruder, if it was any other creature, you should have died a long time ago. But you are very powerful. This is what interests me very much, so I'll give you 2 options. What choice?" Kyle asked calmly. The Grandmaster stretched out 2 fingers. "One is to be my enemy and immediately face the wanted and killed guards all over the planet. The second is to replace those dead challengers and participate in the championship match 2 days later." "I will give 10 seconds," Kyle interrupted him. "I choose second, no matter what. As long as he can gain 2 days and his physical condition improves, he will be much more confident in fighting or fleeing. You are a smart creature. I am very optimistic about you. I hope you can bring me some surprises in the duel field in 2 days' time." The Grandmaster laughed loudly and hid the holographic projection. Kyle smiled lightly, knowing that the crisis had been temporarily lifted. The guards in the square all sighed secretly. Only the chief of the massacre in Symbiosis was attached. His face was blue and ugly. Afterwards, Kyle was obediently escorted by the guards and transferred to the isolated single room where the central building was located. Although there are still layers of protection such as laser doors and space corridors, and 2 nerve paralysis control devices are worn on him, the single room he can live in is his own washroom, lounge, and even an activity and fitness area. A series of high-tech, the smart facilities are much more luxurious than the hotel environment I stayed in before. Even Kyle hadn't expected this change. Chapter 187. In the main city of Saka, in the central building, the challenger is isolated in a single room. The shower in the bathroom sprayed hot water. Kyle was tired and weak lying in the bathtub with his eyes closed and resting his mind. He took a bath with his strong and lean body naked. The smell of blood and ammunition gradually faded away under constant washing. The heart was beating violently, and the wounds on the body began to heal naturally under the stimulation, and there was no scar on the bronzed body surface. Kyle opened his eyes, clenched his fist lightly, and the lost power quietly returned again. "This time is very risky," Kyle sighed softly. "Almost. He really fell into a desperate situation to fight to the death. It's not a way to go on like this. The genetic disease is getting more and more serious. If this problem is not eradicated, it will not be completely at ease. The most helpless thing is not to encounter an invincible enemy, but to be able to overcome it. But there are serious problems in one's own body." Crack, click, click. With a sound of some kind of metal instrument shattering, a small mechanical life walked into the bathroom, holding clean towels and bath towels in both hands, biting a mechanical device similar to a surveillance probe in its mouth, and the end of the thread was still hanging out of its mouth. Kyle got up, wiped his body clean, and walked out of the bathroom with a towel around his lower body. Weiss followed behind, swallowed the metal wire, and reported, "All the monitoring probes in the bright or dark corners of this isolated room have been removed. Good job. I asked you to check things. How did you check?" Kyle sat on the sofa in the hall and asked. "Following the smart devices here, although only 1% of the building's smart system has been invaded, we did find another isolation room, which is 5 floors away from this floor, and the protection measures are more than 3 times stricter than here," Wei Si said slowly. Kyle touched his smooth chin and pondered, "Is it impossible to completely invade the intelligence system of this building? The only thing I know about this planet's system data is the computer system database that comes with a fighter plane. In addition, the intelligent control system of this building is very developed. If there is a forced intrusion, there is a 90.00% probability that it will be discovered and tracked to my existence." Weisi spread his hands humanly. "You don't need to completely invade the system of the entire building, you just need to invade another isolation room. I want to know what kind of creatures live in it," Kyle said in a deep voice. "If you guessed right, the other isolated room lived in the champion creature that had dominated the Saka duel field in the past 6 months. About half a year ago, it coincided with the time when Lee and his brother picked up the broken axe. Is the champion creature related to the broken artifact of the acid Protoss? Kyle had a real feeling somewhere maybe the champion creature has a suitable ability card, which can help him solve the problem of genetic diseases in one fell swoop, and break through the current evolution of his own physique. This is also the main reason why he still takes risks and chooses to stay here. If the pursuit of temporary safety, then Kyle can forcefully break through the isolation room of the central building after recovering his physical strength and injuries. Find the fighter plane and spaceship, and drive the giant wormhole into the sky to leave the planet. I'll try my best. Weiss nodded, and suddenly seemed to notice something, and quickly jumped onto Kyle's shoulder, shrinking and deforming into a nerve-paralyzing device on the side of the neck. Its movements are smooth and flowing, and it is completed in less than half a second. Just after completing this process, the smart door of the isolation room is slowly opened. I'm here to deliver lunch. A young girl dressed as an attendant in a skirt, holding a plate of meals in her hand, walked into the isolation room cautiously, lowering her head and not daring to look at Kyle on the sofa. Put it on the table. Kyle stared straight at the attendant girl, and suddenly felt a little familiar, but he didn't know where this familiarity came from. The table was only 3 meters away from Kyle, and the maidservant hesitated for a moment, then quickly approached with a plate. The girl's hair is pure black, her skin is crystal clear and fair, her small face has exquisite features, and her appearance is very close to that of a human being, except that her ears are slightly pointed and long, and her figure wrapped in an attendant's skirt cannot be concealed. When she got closer to 3 meters, Kyle's face suddenly showed a look of surprise when he saw the card emerging from his body. Then I'm leaving. The servant girl seemed to notice Kyle's gaze, and after quickly putting down the food plate, she was about to leave quickly. Wait a minute, Kyle stopped her, took a picture of his seat next to the sofa, and said with a light smile, "Why don't you come and sit? We've known each other for a long time. Who knew you? I don't remember." Yiji made a gesture to leave, and Kyle added lightly, "I also helped you escape from the guards in the city, and you forgot so soon? I don't know if the master knows that his servant is a criminal. There will be what consequences?" Yiji stopped stiffly, turned around and looked at Kyle, who was only wearing a bath towel, and said with a slightly changed face, "It's you, the guy in the black leopard battlesuit. Why, can't it be me?" Kyle shrugged and said, "The girl in front of her was one of the criminal gangs who had the gene of the unawakened night elves. You are a ruthless person. I heard that you broke into the underground prison and killed 3 creatures that advanced to the semifinals. Now this news is temporarily blocked, and it is only spread within us. If it spreads out, the entire planet will probably be a sensation." Yiji sighed, knowing that Kyle was the one who escaped the guards with her. She completely lost the timidity she had pretended before. It was just an accident. Kyle narrowed his eyes, brooding over Venom's betrayal, as if there was an extra thorn in his flesh that could not be erased. "Do you know that you are in a terrible situation now? 2 days later, you will be the only one who will directly challenge the champion Demon King who is guarding the ring," Yiji kindly reminded. "I know," Kyle nodded calmly. Yiji said solemnly, "Even if you can defeat a monster like the double-headed monster, you are definitely not the opponent of the devil. In the past 6 months, any challenger that the devil has encountered has been completely defeated. Basically, it is easy to kill with one blow. You have shown your true strength." Kyle looked at Yiji and pondered, "If you want to help me, then help me collect information. Why should I help you?" "What's the benefit?" Yiji asked. Her dark heart was far less harmless than it appeared on the surface. "If you don't help me, I'll tell the master that you're a criminal." Kyle held Yiji's handle, and with one sentence, he hit her weak spot. "You?" Yiji stomped her feet and asked angrily, "What information do you want?" "As for the leader of the guard, I want to know his details," Kyle said coldly. "Even if you take the last step to leave this planet, you must first clear the portal." There are still 2 updates. The law game is really fragrant. Chapter 188 Challenger, Tyrant Kyle. 2 days passed. Tonight is the much-anticipated championship game. More than half an hour before the opening time, the alien residents of the whole planet are reveling, or parade through the streets with support flags, or drive a spaceship into the sky, and they all flock to the interstellar dual field to compete for the best viewing point. At this time, central building, fitness area of the Challenger isolation room. The silver hair with a shawl has been cut into vigorous inches. Kyle is wearing a pair of underpants, with his strong upper body bare, and he is doing warm-up exercises with a huge barbell in both hands. His arm muscles are bulging like steel, weighing half a ton. The level barbell is easily moved back and forth like a toy. Master, everything is ready. On the neck, Wei Si notified that it had transformed into a paralysis nerve control device. Okay, Kyle nodded, and put down the barbell with a flick of his hand. The heavy barbell hit the floor with a deafening and dull sound. Yuji, who had just opened the laser protection door and walked into the isolation room, was startled and exclaimed. Kyle picked up the towel to wipe his sweat, raised his eyes to look at Yuji, and said calmly, "It's not the delivery time, why are you here? Aren't you afraid of being suspected by the Grandmaster's guards, you bastard? Why are you still so calm?" Yuji gave him an angry look. The girl's slender and fair face couldn't tell her exact age at all due to the longevity of the elf gene. "Isn't it better to be calm? It's like being in a mess," Kyle shrugged, making a rare joke. "I thought you asked me to provide information because you wanted to find a chance to escape from here in these 2 days. Now that the championship match is about to start, why are you still here?" Yuji felt anxious for him, and suddenly opened her eyes wide. Set in disbelief, "You don't really want to participate in tonight's championship match, why not?" Kyle narrowed his eyes slightly, as if thinking about something. Yuji shook her head. "Crazy, you are really crazy. You have such an idea because you haven't seen how terrifying the Demon King is. No, on the contrary, it's because I know what kind of strength he has that I want to stay here." Kyle chuckled lightly, his face serious and dignified, and his hands were quietly clenched, far less relaxed than it seemed. In the past 2 days, he and Weezy still haven't found a specific and reliable method to break through the multiple protections of the central building, to peep and actually contact the champion Demon King in another isolation room. On the contrary, the manager of the Venom symbiosis basically grasped the information in his heart. However, after the entity trying here summoned the Broken Axe, it seemed that due to the short distance, the Broken Axe had a subtle divine reaction to the creatures on the isolation layer above several floors. There is a nearly, % probability that the real identity of the champion devil is a member of the Asa clan, where Thor belongs. Knowing this news, even if it is dangerous, even if it is an enemy of the creatures of the entire planet, Kyle will stay without hesitation. He left the Earth and entered the starry sky. Isn't it just for this day? The ability cards of the Asa Protoss have always been the first choice of ability cards in Kyle's mind. As long as the body has the Protoss gene, the physique will undoubtedly evolve to a higher level again, and solve the problem of body gene collapse and recombination due to radiation in one fell swoop. This is a real step from hell to heaven, where danger and opportunity coexist. Everything depends on this one time. Kyle took a deep breath, his eyes were firm, and his aura kept rising. Must win. Even if the enemy is a god, it cannot make him shrink back. He wants to bet his entire future on this battle. Half an hour later, night fell as scheduled, and the main city of Sokka below was shrouded in thick darkness. At this time, the interstellar duel venue, countless spaceships and lights projected by the venue, illuminate the area where the venue is located as brightly as day. Under the carnival shouts of 10,000 plus planetary creatures, the voices of people condensed into a real wave of sound, impacting the empty space below. The duel site has been restored. In the auditorium at the scene, Unlee's 2 siblings and Bibo sat next to each other in the front seats. Big Sister and Lee, more than 2 days have passed since that day, and there is no news from Mr. Kyle. Bibo's face was heavy, and it seemed that he had put so much effort into it for several days, and his white hair was sluggish and dull. "I don't know much," Unlee shook her head helplessly, sighed and said, "I was also kicked out of the square by the guards that day. All of them were terrified and did not dare to reveal too much. All I know is that Mr. Kyle is still safe and sound, but I don't know where exactly." "What happened that day? Did Mr. Kyle just go to visit the challenger?" Bibo gritted his teeth and was about to say something. Suddenly, as the lights of the interstellar stadium flickered, more than a dozen small aircraft flew into the sky above the duel venue. "The game is about to start." Bibo's words changed, and his brother and sister-in-law, as well as the tens of thousands of alien spectators in the auditorium, all focused their eyes on the duel venue. Blurred with light and shadow, the Grandmaster image built by the holographic projection aircraft scanned the auditorium around, opened his hands to express welcome, and said with a smile, "Gentlemen and ladies, good evening everyone." The auditorium immediately catered to bursts of enthusiastic sound waves. Grandmaster said slowly, "I know that everyone has been looking forward to tonight's championship match for a long time. But before the match starts, that is, Before the challenger is invited, I want to tell the audience a very important thing. The audience in the auditorium heard the words, and consciously lowered their cheering voices, and looked at the Grandmaster's projection for no reason. What else is more important than the championship game? First of all, this semi-final promotion match will be skipped directly. As soon as the Master's voice fell, the audience was in an uproar, with puzzled and depressed faces on their faces. Don't worry, Grandmaster smiled, and continued, the reason why the semifinals promotion match was skipped is because 2 days ago, an intruder broke into the underground prison, and 3 of the challengers who will be promoted to the semifinals, all killed. What? This news, like a bomb, shocked the alien audience in the auditorium and gasped. One creature alone kills 3 final 4 challengers, how can that be? Could it be that? Unli and Bible looked at each other, with the same incomparable shock on their faces. The intruder's record undoubtedly has the strength to challenge the defending champion, so in this championship match, the challenger will directly face the devil. Grandmaster took a breath, and said loudly with emphasis, now, let us applaud, the only challenger tonight, Tyrant Kyle. Quotation mark. Chapter 189 A Duel with the Gods. In the duel venue, the light beams fell, and the sound of footsteps sounded from the underground passage leading from the square entrance. Amid the applause and cheers of the alien audience, Kyle stepped out vigorously, standing tall and straight on the vast field, with dignified and serious eyes. He holds a machine sword and shield cold weapon in both hands, and his perfect human body is wearing the silver metal armor provided by the Saka guards, like an immortal war god who has experienced wars of all sizes. My god, it's really Mr. Kyle. In the auditorium area, looking at the fully dressed figure in the field, Unli and Bibo were completely speechless for a moment. On the suspended rooftop above the interstellar duel arena, in the viewing room where the Grandmaster and his cronies are located, Slaughter sat on a seat close to the Grandmaster, looked down blankly, looked at Kyle directly below, and whispered to himself in a voice that only he could hear, I know your strength very well, indeed. It's terrifyingly strong, but no matter what, you can't defeat that guardian creature that far surpasses the human race. As if hearing its sound, the tempered glass bottle trembled slightly in the pocket of the massacre windbreaker, and the bottle body, which was already full of cracks, quietly cracked a gap again. Okay. The challenger has come out. Now let me invite you, tonight's protagonist, defending the ring. The Grandmaster is very good at mobilizing the atmosphere, and the popularity of the defenders has already accumulated, and the applause and cheers that are 10 times higher than Kyle's burst out in an instant. A human-shaped shadow slowly appeared from the passage door opposite the main entrance. In the duel arena, Kyle looked nervous, his palms holding the sword and shield were sweating, and staring directly at the tall figure who was about to break through the door, he already keenly felt a strong sense of oppression in his heart. The biological overlord who has defended the championship ring 6 times in a row is the well-deserved uncrowned king. He is the Devil King Kratos. After the Grandmaster's passionate off-court speech, the tall figure just walked out of the passageway door. It was a tall and powerful bald man with a rough and unrestrained face, red lines painted on his left eye, a thick black beard on his chin, iron chains wrapped around the backs of his hands, and a bare-backed and tiger-waisted figure with a simple girth. Primitive leather clothing that is not considered protective clothing. The moment he appeared on the field, his powerful and heavy aura swept over him, which immediately caused a wave of carnival among the audience. The devil. The devil. The devil. Kratos ignored the audience's shouts, strode forward, looked at Kyle standing in front of him, and said in a deep voice, my opponent this time is you, who else but me? The heart beat violently, and Kyle panted slightly to hide his uncontrollable fear. It's like a cat and dog meeting a lion and tiger, far higher than the layers of their own biological chain, even the blood and genes are throbbing. Is the one he wants to face and defeat really a god creature? Please enjoy this game to your heart's content. The Grandmaster's holographic projection disappeared, announcing the official start of the duel and the championship. We must act first, take the initiative in battle. Kyle's eyes tended to be firm and resolute. His feet quickly stepped back on the air heavily, a series of white waves erupted on the spot, the energy tide was chaotically stirred, and his speed soared instantly to break through the supersonic speed. Sprint in the air, an auxiliary skill that accelerates in a straight line. Kratos stood motionless on the spot, as if he hadn't reacted yet. In less than 0.1 second, Kyle's figure had blurred across a distance of 20 meters and arrived in front of the opponent. In the air, Kyle clenched a long sword held high in his right hand, cooperated with his sprint burst, and suddenly slashed towards Kratos' bare neck. He was very aware of the gap in strength between them, and he took the initiative to seize the opportunity. This sword cut contained all his strength, 10 times the extreme of human physique. Ling. As soon as the long sword landed on Kratos' neck, Kyle's face was horrified, and he felt his tiger's mouth tremble violently. The long sword trembled and almost fell apart, as if it was cut on a hard vibrating gold shield and could not be submerged. How is it possible? Kyle's mind was blank. He was confident in the burst of the mid-air sprint, and even the gods could not avoid it with certainty, but he didn't expect that the slash that was budgeted to cause serious injuries at the very least did not break the defense. At this distance, he concentrated his thoughts, and the ability cards on the opponent's body were also revealed. Nearly 1,000 white, green and blue ability cards emerged and revolved around Kratos' body, almost blinding Kyle's eyes. One of the ability cards, such as the levitation of the God King, shines on the bald head. Protus gene, the original gene of the Protus rare purple ability card, unawakened state. Marvel cosmic creatures are at the forefront of evolution. They are collectively called the Protus. They have extremely good deified genes, have a lifespan of at least a few thousand years, and rank among the top among all alien creatures in terms of strength, will, physique, and speed. Mao. There is divine power in the body, which can be used to strengthen attacks, cast spells, and even bless artifacts to exert unimaginable power. After gradually awakening the original power, each member of the Protus masters different lock powers, ranging from thunder, flame, ice, and death. Current status, extractable, need to be drawn within 1 meter and last for 3 hours. And the rare purple prefix is unique and can only be drawn once. Warning, Kratos' divine power focuses on strengthening his body. All this happened in the blink of an eye. Kyle's long sword slashed on Kratos' neck with all his strength, and a few drops of blood spilled slightly from the skin. If one blow fails, he will retreat quickly. What a fast burst speed. Also, you can actually hurt me. You are the #1 challenger in the past 6 months. Kratos grinned at Kyle with a row of white teeth, and his sandbag-sized fist was faintly golden red with divine power glowing. He punched Kyle's chest in the air. Kyle's complexion changed drastically, and before he had time to distance himself, he could only hastily raise his shield and blocked in front of him. As soon as he made this action, Kyle felt a terrifying force pouring on the shield, his pressed hands bent against his chest, and his whole body was thrown backward like a kite that had been disconnected. Boom! Kyle flew more than 30 meters backwards, and hit the back wall on the edge of the duel field. The outer wall collapsed into a deep pit, with gravel flying around and dust flying. In the surrounding auditoriums, the alien audiences opened their mouths wide open, and the collective fell silent in astonishment and shock. From the beginning of the game, Kyle launched a sudden slash, Kratos was hit with a sword in the neck, and Kyle flew upside down. This series of battles took place within a second. Fairies fight, this is the fight of the gods. Should I say that it is a Protus? After coughing a few times, the corner of Kyle's mouth overflowed with bright red blood, and he climbed up from the pile of rubble. There was a huge fist mark in the middle of the metal shield next to him. Can no longer block the second punch. However, the battle has just begun. Kyle looked at Kratos, who was invincible in the field. His eyes showed unyielding, and he decisively used the last 2 days of preparation. Weiss, Iron Man mode, ready to start. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 190 Iron Armor Mode. Do you want to continue? Kratos clenched their fists calmly, and stepped forward step by step, as if a faint layer of divine flame was burning on their bodies. Even the audience outside the duel venue could feel a strong sense of oppression. Mr. Kyle, sisters and Lee and Bibo covered their mouths and closed their eyes slightly, unable to bear to watch the tragic fight that ensued. It's not that Kyle is too weak, but Kratos who guards the ring is too strong, suffocating and desperate. Under the watchful eyes of countless people, the duel venue was slightly enveloped in the dust of Kyle's figure, and a small round of dazzling daytime light sources suddenly burst into light. If you get close to Kyle now, you can definitely see that in the palm of his left hand, he is holding the last Krypton gold made by Howard, which is the core of the steel suit. Steel armor transforms, activate, Weiss narrated softly. From the small paralysis nerve control device, the mechanical parts began to deform quickly and twisted regularly, and the wires were inserted and adsorbed on the chest of the metal mechanical armor, turning into a sunken mechanical notch. Kyle raised his hand and pressed the Krypton Gold onto the notch of Weiss's deformed machine. Krypton Gold and Weiss are equivalent to the foundation and the switch. When the two are pieced together, there is an immediate leap in essence. The whistling white electric light is emitted from the mechanical notch, and is transmitted to the metal armor, long sword, and even the cracked metal shield on the ground. These metal mechanical equipment are led by Weiss, and they are quickly pieced together and transformed with enough Krypton Gold energy, transformed into a steel suit that fits and covers the body surface. I kept you waiting, the battle continues, a calm and indifferent voice sounded, but in fact, it took less than 5 seconds for a silver Iron Man whose chest glowed with the energy of the day, to replace Kyle and stand on the dueling field. Between humans and gods, there is a huge natural moat that cannot be easily overcome in terms of individual strength. Just like the comparison between the abilities of blue and purple, there is a whole grade difference, which cannot be filled in a short time. Kyle understood this truth very well, and knew in advance that he was about to face an opponent of the same height as Thor. Since he chose to stay and fight, how could he not have prepared in advance? Mutation is not enough, equipment to make up. The difference between a mortal and a god can be a set of steel battle suits. In the rooftop room at the top of the Interstellar Stadium, Tuanzua couldn't sit still and stood up, and loudly protested to the Grandmaster next to him, "Foul. This is an absolute foul. The championship game actually brought high-tech weapons into the game. What? Didn't you pick out the metal armor and sword and shield weapons in the arsenal 2 days ago and have someone send them over? Transformation of weapons is also one of the strengths of the challenger." The Grandmaster smiled faintly and looked at the Iron Man below. "I thought it would end soon, so the game will be much more interesting." Interesting, Kratos grinned, but he didn't mind Kyle's steel armor. He squatted with a little power, sprinted and jumped, and his tall and strong body rushed forward like a heavy shell. "Master, the material of this steel battle suit still can't withstand the opponent's frontal attack." Weiss started the battle analysis of the battle situation. "Of course I know." Kyle looked at Kratos, who was leaping forward, took a deep breath, and the jet engines on the soles of his feet and palms erupted with scorching and dazzling energy tail flames, which was already 10 times faster than that of humans. "So, I still want to take the initiative to attack." He quickly dodged and flew to the low sky, and Kratos slammed heavily on the ground the next moment, trampling his feet and elbowing his arms. The explosive impact made the hard floor within 5 meters of him as the center fragile. Cracks collapse. Kyle turned his hands and feet. Iron Man's body drifted back at low altitude, and Kratos fell to the bottom at a high speed. At the same time, he punched a straight punch with his right hand. Directional jet energy assists the blessing of fist strength. It's just right. Kratos seemed to have eyes behind him, turned around and looked up, and swung his left fist upwards. Iron Fist versus God Fist. The engines all over Iron Man's body were boosting jets. Kratos stood still, and the floor under his feet shattered like a spider's web again during the stalemate. The corner of Kyle's mouth raised, and he quickly raised his other hand. Under Kratos' unexpected gaze, he aimed at the center of his metal palm to emit the light of the engine, and burst out a beam of burning laser cannons at close range. Boom! Kratos was immediately thrown out by the laser. Iron Man's engine roared and exploded, unwilling to let go of this opportunity to pursue the victory. Iron Man mode. The main attack method is cannon fire. Kyle's face was cold, and he was flying in the air. He raised a pair of metal palms like 2 cannon muzzles. He aimed simply and continuously fired beams of laser light that pierced the sky. The aftermath of the energy explosion densely flooded Kratos' body. The audience and the surrounding audience seats were stunned. In the past, the duel field was basically a melee combat between creatures, but today is a unique and strange battle at the beginning. In the arena, the engine roared, the lasers blazed, the energy flames of the day covered the area where Kratos was located, and the billowing airwaves and dust filled the interior of the interstellar duel arena. Kyle was suspended in the low air until half of the Krypton Gold's energy was exhausted. The metal engines on the palms of his hands were hot red, and even the steel melted under the continuous laser cannon shots, and then he stopped attacking, slightly panting. "Weiss, is the attack effective?" Kyle asked dignifiedly, looking at the gunpowder in front of him. "Looking at the test, be careful." Weiss's voice sounded quickly, and in the next moment, an iron chain shot from the front and bottom at a high speed, entangled and locked Kyle's left calf. "Oops," Kyle's face changed slightly, the engines on both feet exploded, and he subconsciously wanted to fly to the sky to raise his altitude. Clang clang. The links of the iron chain were tight. No matter how much the engine of the steel suit vibrated, Kyle couldn't move up half a millimeter for a while, let alone break free from the shackles of the damned iron chain. Quatu, on the ground below, the figure of Kratos gradually appeared in the scattered gunpowder smoke. Grinning coldly and majestically, his appearance was scorched and black all over, but the wounds were only limited to the skin, and he held the other end of the iron chain in his hand. Get off! Kratos grasped the iron chain with both hands, pulled it down suddenly, turned it quickly, dragged Kyle around 3 times like a windmill, and then swung it straight to the ground and smashed it down. Far beyond tons of pure power, only one violent chain smash, half of the silver armor Iron Man's body sank into the ground, the core krypton gold on his chest dimmed slightly, and cracks began to bloom in some parts of the steel armor. It is only made of steel and has no shock-absorbing mechanical suit. Most of the shocks are borne by the inner Kyle gritting his teeth. This is just the beginning. Kratos was imposing like a rainbow. After taking the initiative, he swung the iron chain up and down with his thick arms, smashing Kyle covered in the steel suit into the ground again and again. Chapter 191 Super Kill, Live to Death. Boom, boom, boom. In the midst of the battle, the iron chains were clanging and clanging, and the sound of the steel armor hitting the ground continued furiously. Kratos completely transformed himself into the ruthless god of war and demon king, with a power absolutely superior to that of human beings, smashing Kyle to the ground again and again like playing with his opponent. Wow! Bibo prostrated in Lee's arms, his tail raised up in panic, not daring to look any further. It had until the whole steel armor was covered with cracks. Little by little blood overflowed from the gaps of the armor, half of the steel mask covering the face was split, revealing Kyle's bloodless face inside. Kratos swung the iron chain again and dragged Kyle into the sky. At this moment, the metal arm was lifted slightly, and the palm engine that was on the verge of scrapping emitted a beam of laser light, precisely bombarding the middle of the iron chain. The iron chain broke with a sound, and Kyle was able to break free and fly out. When the free fall was close to the ground, energy waves were sprayed out from the soles of his feet in time, and he stopped and landed firmly on the ground. Master. The energy has leaked out, and there is less than one layer left, and this deformed and patchwork steel suit is on the verge of collapse, and it can no longer carry out high-load battles for a long time, Wei Siluo's worried feedback said. It's not just the armor, I'm dying too. Bah! Kyle spit out a mouthful of bloody phlegm, looked coldly at Kratos in front of him, pondered and said, I can't hide anymore. Start the super kill in the steel armor mode. Yes, Weiss immediately understood what Kyle meant. During the 2 days in the isolation room of the central building, Kyle and Weiss collected information, made crude steel suits, and continuously used the data to conduct no less than 1,000 battle simulation exercises on the computer. There's only one way to defeat higher race creatures like gods, that is super kill. Whether you win or lose, it's all on this move. Kyle took a deep breath, shook his palm, and discarded the scrap engine in the palm of the steel suit. Seeing this scene, Kratos asked calmly, why, did you give up? Of course not. Kyle smiled coldly, and an energy tide burst out from the soles of his feet, leaving a series of white waves rushing forward. Sprint in the air. Is it this trick again? The same loss. I won't suffer a second time, otherwise I will pretend to be the god of war. With a thought in his mind, Kratos reacted quickly and threw his fist in front of him the moment he saw Kyle's figure disappear. The explosive speed of air sprinting can indeed be regarded as extremely fast, but the biggest flaw is that it can only sprint in a straight line in the original direction. Just as Kratos judged and guessed, Kyle's figure appeared in front of the punching fist amidst the blurry flickering, accompanied by the hunting wind. From a third-party perspective, it's like Kyle took the initiative to hit Kratos' fist with his chest. The audience in the auditorium exclaimed, and Kratos also grinned. It's over. The fist landed on the chest of Kyle's steel battlesuit, the krypton gold notch in the middle of which glowed white, that is, Weiss' body, and under the buffer of the kinetic energy absorbed by the vibrating gold characteristic, the terrifying punch still couldn't stop. Diffusion erupted, and the steel suit was about to collapse completely with cracks. The blood was coughed up together with the shattered lung fragments. Kyle didn't even groan in pain. His feet touched the floor without retreating at all. His eyes shone with hope and determination. This is the moment. Kyle ignored his injuries, stretched out his hands like lightning, and pressed 2 small paralyzing devices on Kratos' shoulders. he roared. Weiss. At the same time, Weisi has used radio waves to simulate the sending of the start signal, the paralyzing nerve control device is activated, and the wide electro-optic lasing envelopes Kratos, penetrating and paralyzing his inner body. One shot is enough to temporarily paralyze Thor, causing him to lose the ability to resist action, let alone 2 shots that increase their holdings together. Kratos opened his eyes wide, his unshakable powerful body trembled, and finally fell straight facing Kyle. Kyle rested his hands on Kratos' lower abdomen, and the engine under the steel suit's feet glowed and started, and he flew up sharply, pushing his body under Kratos and flying up into the sky. But in the blink of an eye, under the horrified eyes of countless onlookers in the venue, Kyle, with Kratos' incapacitated body, crossed a height of, meters in the interstellar stadium, and passed countless floating spectator spaceships, without the slightest sign of stopping the trend. Rushed to the vast starry sky. My God, crazy, really crazy. Yiji sat down on the deck of a spaceship, her eyes glazed over. What does he want to do? Tuzuo stood up again, looked up in shock, and looked at Kyle, who had turned into a bright star in the sky. In the seat next to him, the smile on Grandmaster's face disappeared, and he raised his head slightly. His eyes were full of surprise, feeling that things were beyond his control. Right above the duel venue, above 1,000-meter altitude, the tail flames of the feet of Kyle's steel suit splashed, and Kratos, who was still slightly twitching with his hands against his body, flew faster and faster like a rocket, constantly raising the height at supersonic speed. Master, the energy of Krypton Gold has been reduced to less than half. If this continues, you will not have enough energy to return to the ground safely, Weisi warned. Kyle smiled lightly when he heard this, and said with unprecedented determination, "Don't worry about landing. Just drive to the maximum horsepower of the engine and keep going." Yes, Weisi followed his order and turned the engine of the steel suit to the maximum, and the roar of machinery and energy burning resounded all the way through the sky. 2,000 meters, 3,000 meters, 5,000 meters. This height is not enough, let me continue, Kyle growled, facing the cold wind of the night, climbed to the height without any hesitation. 6,000 meters, 7,000 meters, 9,000 meters. At this height, it is almost out of the atmosphere of the planet Sokka, and the surroundings are full of colorful space wormholes, and the space and air around are distorted and disordered. The tail flame ceased, and the steel suit completely thawed at 0 degrees. Weisi's difficult deformation control caused the suit to collapse into countless pieces of iron attached to the ice slag, revealing the inner Kyle. Kyle's eyebrows were covered with frost, and his breathing was difficult. He adjusted his posture slightly in the air, held Kratos' legs tightly with both hands, and aimed the big bald head downward. Then, the two were fixed as one and began to fall from a height of 9,000 meters. Kratos' body trembled, and his will gradually became clear, but it was too late. 8,000 meters, 6,000 meters, 4,000 meters, 2,000 meters. The speed of the fall was getting faster and faster, and the wind pressure made Kyle feel painful, but he just stared at the ever-growing interstellar stadium, and he never moved his eyes away. Master, the speed is too fast. If you fall to the ground like this, even if there is an enemy as a cushion, even you will die on the spot with a high probability. Weisi transformed into a headset and hung it fixedly beside Kyle's ear, reminding him nervously. If you don't take risks, how can you have a chance to defeat the creatures of the gods? Kyle laughed boldly, looked at the venues that were getting closer and closer, and closed his eyes consciously. This is the real life to death, bet the future on this below. Chapter 192 Return of Venom, Ultimate Full Coverage. In the auditorium of the Interstellar Stadium, hundreds of thousands of alien spectators, even the Grandmasters, raised their heads in unison, staring in horror at the night sky where Kyle and the two were completely gone. Everyone held their breath, not wanting to miss a single detail of this epic battle, and the entire crowded arena suddenly fell silent. Afterwards, the black dot became bigger and bigger, and it fell straight down to the duel field at an extremely fast speed, without any tendency to stop and slow down. "I'm coming," as the audience exclaimed like a boiling nest, and watched with wide-open eyes in shock. Kyle and Kratos' fixed figures, blurred like a streamer, suddenly hit the center of the duel field. Boom! Like a falling star, the concrete ground collapsed, and the super-strong shock wave of the falling blasted away the gravel and dust within a radius of 10 meters. The interstellar stadium was suddenly silent. When the dust settled, it could be clearly seen that in the middle of the open and flat duel field, a 5-meter diameter, bottomless pit appeared in the duel field. This extremely visually impactful scene caused countless creatures to feel their scalps go numb, and their bodies and minds were trembling slightly with horror. My God, is there any living thing here that survives? Probably, they're all dead. Then what is this? A draw? The faces of the audience were flushed, and they couldn't help but whisper to each other no matter what. This is a battle that can be recorded in the history of the Sokka Star duel field. Shush. At this moment, a slight sound came from the deep pit, and under the surprised eyes of the audience, a thick palm slowly protruded from the pit, resting on the edge of the pit and struggling to get up. It's the Devil King Kratos, but at this moment, he can only use one word to describe his whole body: miserable. The big bald head was covered with bright blood like blooming flowers, the blood flowed down and into the deep-set eye sockets, the rough face looked hideous and terrifying, his clothes were tattered, his whole body was covered with gravel and mud, and he looked completely different from the majestic god of war before. What a crazy guy. Kratos struggled to climb out of the pit, stood dizzily on the edge, looked down into the deep pit, and seriously commented, "In the human family of lower creatures, I would like to call you the strongest, but obviously, the battle between us has come to an end." Kratos shook his head lightly, falling from a height of nearly, meters. If it weren't for a protist like him with outstanding physique and divine power, no matter how advanced a race creature to smash into a pile of pate. This move is too crazy. It can no longer simply be called a move, it's a kind of awareness. Killing 1,000 enemies and self-defeating 800, it is almost a determination to risk death to perform it. Kratos turned around and opened his arms facing the auditorium, and the enthusiastic carnival sound burst out in response to the shouts. "Mr. Kyle, are you dead?" Bibo opened his mouth wide, not daring to believe this fact. "It should be," and Lee nodded with a sad face, and was about to say some comforting words, when suddenly she seemed to see something. Her eyes widened in surprise. "Bibo, look quickly, what is that?" Similarly, the cheers of most of the audience stopped abruptly, and they stared at the deep pit behind Kratos in surprise. Kratos noticed their abnormality, turned around, and the next moment, even his pupils shrank. I saw a hand protruding slowly from the deep pit. Black liquid was constantly beading on the arm, covering it with a layer of smooth and tough cuticle. With his hands on the ground, with a little help, a tall figure jumped out vigorously, and landed lightly on the other side of the deep pit. Its tall humanoid body is dark black in appearance, its muscular outline is extremely wild with assembly lines, its narrow and long eyes are scarlet, and it has a wicked grin, like a black demon crawling out of hell. "Who are you?" Kratos frowned, looking at the lifeless creature in front of him, his body tensed subconsciously, feeling a sense of danger in his heart for the first time. "I just blew your bald head off. Now ask who I am." The dark creature grinned and spread his hands. "But it's true, this form, even the breath has changed. Let me introduce myself formally. I'm Tyrant Kyle, in the rooftop room at the top of the duel arena." The Grandmaster stood up, looked at Kyle who had changed greatly below, and looked at the bloodless carnage on the side, and asked in a deep voice, "What's going on here? Did something rush from you just now?" Out. The slaughtered face was extremely ugly, and he remained silent. There was still debris from the burst glass in the windbreaker pocket, and he roared unwillingly in his heart, "Venom, you chose to return to him in the end and betrayed me who was originally one, in the duel arena." Kyle stretched his limbs, the long-lost state of full coverage of Venom, and the feeling of a full increase came to his heart. Just now, at the moment when he was about to fall from a high altitude to the ground, he really thought that he would die in all likelihood, but at the moment when he passed the roof of the Interstellar Stadium, a ball of black liquid suddenly jumped out, wrapping and protecting his body. Unexpectedly, it was Venom who saved him in the end, and the one who betrayed him before was another derivative symbiont. Kyle secretly sighed. After the symbiotic fusion with the Venom, the consciousness and the thinking of the Venom were intertwined, and he knew the split of the Venom in an instant. Venom has experienced the World War II war with him for a long time. Such negative emotions as killing, cruelty, ruthlessness, etc. have long been hidden in the depths of the body. Two symbionts. This is where the massacre comes in. Carnage can be said to be the co-creation of Kyle and Venom's negative thoughts, so it is stronger and more subjective. When they came to this planet half a year earlier, Carnage and Venom survived by constantly attaching to the alien residents, but then there was a huge difference between the two. Venom wants to find and wait for Kyle, while Carnage wants to go out on his own and become a brand new powerful creature. In this difference of concept, the two finally broke up completely. Carnage, who can fully control the host's body, is very powerful, restraining and trapping the venom, and the ambitious control guard chief, ready to replace the position of the master one day. It's your fault. Kyle smiled in relief, and could feel that Venom was more innocent than before, and he kept conveying joy to him, just like the night when he just got a Venom card. Speaking of cards at this time, the Venom Symbiote biological card is very different from before. Adult Venom Symbiote, a symbiote that has grown to a certain level. Purple bio card. The venom does not need to be combined with the host, and can survive alone. Symbiosis can greatly increase the strength and ability of the host. The weakness is ultrasonic waves and high temperature. Having reached adulthood, the growth rate of venom will be greatly reduced. Currently mastered abilities: fast learning, transfiguration of any clothing, defense against bullets, liquid self-healing repair, memory detection and interception, gliding flight, dark claws, clinging walking, whipping, sharp blades, thousands of tentacles. The number of hosts that have lived with it so far is 108. The larger the value, the more powerful the venom will be. Chapter 193: 10,000 Tentacles, and Everything. Adult venom, in its full coverage form of symbiotic fusion, might really be able to defeat the injured and weakened god creature, Kyle thought to himself. Clenching his fists could feel sufficient power accumulation, and now his pure power is 13 times that of human beings. Don't underestimate this increase of less than 1/3. Not only strength, but also physique, speed, facial perception, etc., have been greatly improved. Moreover, the venom's own defense coat that is tough enough to be bulletproof, as well as various forms of combat capabilities, just make up for the lack of a super soldier's physical offensive and defensive balance, and completely transform into a fighting creature fighting for battle without any worries. Although your face and appearance have become hideous and terrifying, I have even torn apart large ancient monsters from alien planets. Mere human beings, do you want to compare with the gods? Kratos spoke in a majestic deep voice, but his eyes became deeper and more solemn, and the faint brilliance of divine power permeated the surface of the body, and the pressure that surpassed all living beings leaked outwards. Kyle grinned and moved, his scarlet eyes flickered coldly, and his body was full of violent, evil, killing, wild, and fearless fighting spirit. Whether you are a man or a god, hit it right, take advantage of your life to kill you. Tread. The floor collapsed and shattered, and Kyle burst out suddenly, turning into blurry black after image, and launched an extremely violent offensive towards Kratos. Now the opponent is still in a dizzy and injured state of falling from a high altitude, and Kyle's state is at its peak after the return of venom. It makes no sense to wait for the opponent to recover. Kratos raised his head quickly, and a bright knife light flickered, but it was Kyle's left arm that was completely transformed into a huge blade. The handle of the knife was the shoulder cut down. Arms crossed in front of his body, Kratos blocked the blade slash, and the blade only pierced a trace of his skin. But then, Kyle's eyes flickered fiercely, and he quickly stretched out his other free right hand, which transformed into a black tough long whip, bounced and shot out, entangled and restrained Kratos' neck. Kratos' face changed slightly, and he wanted to reach out to pull the long whip, but how could Kyle give him time to fight back? Dash in the air, blast me. Kelson grinned grimly, and activated the skill of sprinting in the air. The energy tide under his feet erupted in disorder, and the whole person, including the long whip wrapped around the restrained Kratos, rushed to a height of 30 meters in an instant. This is back to you earlier, when the person reached the highest point in the air. Kyle pulled the long whip with both hands, and slammed back suddenly as if his shoulder fell. Boom. Kratos was slammed to the floor of the field, and his big bald head was injured again, which made him dizzy. Come again. Kyle seemed to be quite resentful about what happened before, gliding down, dragging Kratos, who was too late to break free from the whip, to the edge of the venue. He climbed upside down and stood on the wall of the duel venue, pulling and swinging the long whip, hanging Kratos' body upwards, swinging and falling to the floor again and again. Gravel splashed everywhere, dust billowed, and the duel field was trembling slightly. God? Is that still Mr. Kyle? Brother and Lee and Bibo were in the front area of the auditorium, watching the scene from a close distance. They couldn't help but look at each other. There is no end. In the duel arena, Kratos suddenly let out a roar. His depression and anger were all written on his face. After a fall, his feet were firmly planted on the ground, and he pulled Kyle, who was standing on the wall, to the ground simply by pulling his neck back. Pulled back. Kyle reacted quickly canceling the long whip form of his left hand, and gliding in the low air with his wings, trying to quickly pass over Kratos' head. Kratos squatted and jumped up, bouncing amazingly close to Kyle, punching him to fly him away. Claw form, Kyle stared, stretched out 3 dark claws with his clenched left fist, and fought with the opponent's fist with divine power. Crack! From the tip of the dark claw to the end of the fist, it shattered and collapsed inch by inch. Sure enough, it's still too difficult to catch a punch from the Protoss head-on. After suffering a dark loss, Kyle sighed helplessly, and gliding away from the follow-up attack while clutching his left arm in pain. In the duel arena, Kratos is even more depressed in the state of full coverage of Venom. Kyle has a variety of attack forms, not to mention, the movements are too flexible, and gliding can also fly in the air for a short time. A Protoss without a divine weapon is like a bird with its wings broken. While its strength has been greatly reduced, it cannot fly by relying solely on divine power. I don't know where my artifact battle axe is. If my artifact is still there, Kratos gritted his teeth and fell back to the ground weakly. A while ago, he still had some contact with a broken battle axe, until a few days ago, this contact was suddenly and completely severed. Kratos didn't know that the axe was in Kyle's card space, and it had become a private collection of item cards. In the next battle, Kyle did not choose to be tough with Kratos, but cleverly used his own agility and dexterity to use multi-form attack methods to consume and torture Kratos' divine power and spirit little by little like hunting prey. Kratos is not afraid at all, his god body is rough and thick, with divine power, and his physical resistance is beyond the table. Even if Kyle's most offensive blade cuts off, it is basically just a skin trauma. For a moment, no one could do anything to the other, and the battle between the two became an infinitely prolonged deadlock. But even so, the audience in the auditorium still watched thrillingly, and their eyes never left the fierce duel field for half a second. It's not an option to drag it on like this. Kyle just jumped and glided, dodging Kratos' divine punch, and a thought flashed through his mind. Is there any combat form that I haven't used before? Venom seemed to know what he was thinking, and quickly gave a reminder in his heart. By the way, there is that new trick. Kyle took a deep breath, closed his eyes to adjust his status, hovered in mid-air 10 meters high with his wings, and clenched his hands slightly nervously. In the next instant, all the strength in his body was exhausted. At the same time, the Venom's transfigured cuticle coat glowed with a dark light, as if it was brewing and preparing for something. What new tricks are you doing? Kratos snorted coldly, stepped on the floor, sprinted as high as a cannonball, and quickly approached Kyle in the air. The moment Kratos approached him, Kyle suddenly opened his eyes, his scarlet pupils brightened, and he stared forward indifferently and calmly. Sorry, the outcome has been decided. Whoa whoa whoa. There were tens of millions of sharp black tentacles with a gloomy luster, centered on his body, densely packed and ejected at a very high speed. Like a firework of death in hell, it blooms to the extreme in an instant. Thousands of tentacles, and everything. Chapter 194. Borrow 3 more hours from the sky and become a god. Tick. The sharp black tentacles pierced Kratos' chest and limbs. Although they did not completely penetrate the body of the god, they still penetrated more than half of the bone. The bright red blood with brilliance flowed down several tentacles and quietly dripped onto the ground. The rest of the more than 1,000 black tentacles that exploded in a 360-degree direction without any dead angle were ejected downward, and the ground was easily pierced like a piece of fragile paper, forming a vertical black column. The tentacles ejected into the sky pierced through the floor of the rooftop room at the top of the Interstellar Stadium. Unfortunately, the bodies of several of the Grandmaster's confidants were completely pierced, and one of the tips was barely able to hang under the Grandmaster's crotch. The tentacles ejected in all directions just arrived at the auditorium, hovered in front of the alien audience, and even half a meter further forward was enough to affect and kill hundreds of creatures. Kyle opened his mouth wide in surprise, and even he was a little confused for a moment by the power of the thousands of tentacles, but there was no time to think about it. The strength in his body was almost exhausted, and the feeling of fatigue and weakness invaded his body. What's more serious is the venom, the gliding wings, the dark hood, and the cuticle biological coat, all of which melt like ice and snow meeting the sun, turning into countless viscous black liquids that fade from Kyle's body surface, like blood flowed down. Now in the duel arena, the only one who has kept his status as we see it quickly crawled behind Kyle, fixed and transformed into a rocket backpack, spraying a little blue tail flame, causing Kyle to remain suspended in the air. Venom, Kyle shouted, waved his palm lightly, and turned the falling black liquid, that is, the body of the venom, into a card, and returned it to sink into the card space. Master, the sound waves have detected that there are guard spaceships encircling this side, Weiss responded with a message. Then turn over our last hole card. Kyle's eyes were dim, and he looked weakly at the Kratos, who was in a coma and was fixed in mid-air by the tentacles. He gritted his teeth and said, no matter what, we must take this Protus get out of here safely. At this time, in the rooftop room at the top of the Interstellar Stadium, the Grand Master was still in shock, and he kicked and smashed the black tentacles at close range. With a gloomy silence on his face, his cronies who were familiar with him knew very well that he was in a state of rage at this time. Tuzuo realized that the opportunity was coming, stepped forward and said in a deep voice, Grandmaster, that man is not like other challengers. It is too difficult to control through means, and it will be the scourge of Sokka sooner or later. I suggest that it is best to take advantage of it at this time. Let him fall forever on this dueling field. Okay, you will take the lead in handling this matter as the team leader, and you can freely mobilize the guards of the entire planet. The Grand Master nodded without a trace of hesitation, squinting and said, but I have one request. Save the Devil King Kratos. Yes, ecstasy appeared on Tuzuo's face. He glanced at the chaotic duel arena, turned decisively and walked out of the room door. Went to the elevator, took out a communication device and ordered, all guard spaceships around the venue. Give me seal the venue, send some combat spaceships into the venue, and shoot me the Challenger Tyrant with a laser cannon. Even if you flatten the duel venue, you will not hesitate? Regarding the preservation of Kratos, Carnage did not explain even a word to the guards for it. All factors that hinder the killing of Kyle and Venom are burdens and burdens. Kyle must die. The camera switches back to the Interstellar Stadium. Due to the horror of thousands of tentacles, the auditorium was completely chaotic at this moment. The voices were noisy, and countless alien audiences fled out in panic. The venue is like a huge beehive, completely blown up by the final blow. In the venue full of intertwined tentacles, Kyle was pulling Kratos' body from the tentacles with the help of Weisi, and carried it on his shoulders with difficulty. Just after finishing this step, in the open night sky above Kyle's head, the humming of several spaceship engines reached his ears. Immediately afterwards, the scorching and dazzling laser cannon roared down, bombarding the black pillar with remaining tentacles. Bang bang bang. The pillar exploded, the airwave swept across, and countless residues like shards of black glass poured down the sky and covered the sky. Seeing this scene, the alien audience was even more terrified, and they left the venue desperately, and many gates and exits were crowded into a mountain. Weiss, if you don't hurry up, we will really be left here, Kyle whispered, energy, carrying Kratos' dead body, using the back rocket to move under the tentacles, as a cover to avoid a laser cannon that shoots down. However, under the continuous cannon fire from the spaceship, the tentacles of Lin Li are decreasing sharply at a speed visible to the naked eye, and there is nowhere to escape. Here we come, Weisi suddenly called out. As if to verify its words, a fighter plane that was so fast that it was like a streamer rushed into the Interstellar Stadium area on a rampage. The laser muzzle jumped and aimed at the two guard spaceships that were attacking Kyle. Boom. The two spaceships were destroyed on the spot, braving billowing flames and black smoke. The plane crashed and landed in the duel field. The secondary explosion of the fuselage turned the wide field into a sea of flames. Call out. Propelled by the back-mounted rocket, Kyle picked up Kratos and quickly soared into the sky from the sea of fire. The fighter immediately automatically opened the cabin door to greet them. Accelerate and flee to the outside of the interstellar field. Grass. Just as Tuzuo came out of the elevator, when he looked up and saw this scene, his expression suddenly changed, and he shouted loudly at the communication device in his hand, "They are going to escape with the plane, and I will chase all the guard spaceships. Don't worry about it, just connect people directly, destroy the one with the machine, understand?" Countless guard spaceships waiting for orders near the venue, after receiving the order, started their engines to speed up, and started chasing Kyle's fighter plane. Inside the Eagle fighter jet flying at high speed, Kyle threw Kratos, who was seriously injured and unconscious, on the floor of the cabin, followed by lying on the metal floor beside him, gasping for breath. Taking advantage of his weakness, the genetic disease is forcibly taking away the physical ability of the super soldier. Weisi quickly transformed into a robot form, jumped into the main driver's seat, inserted both hands into the socket of the fighter pilot, and completely connected himself with the fighter system, so as to perfectly control everything about the fighter. Weiss reported, "Master, there are nearly 30 spaceships chasing us in the rear. Are we fighting back, Or are we fleeing? In which direction? Don't worry about them. There are too many enemy spaceships. Once we get caught in a firefight, we won't be able to escape here. Kyle gasped for breath, insisted not to fall into a coma, relying on his will, and supported himself with both hands to get up with difficulty. Turn around with them and buy me as much time as possible. With a slight movement in his mind, the ability cards on Kratos' body appeared in front of his eyes, shining brightly. Without even looking at the other ability cards, Kyle's eyes fell directly on the rare purple ability card, Protus Gene. He's going to be a god. Kratos did not appear in Marvel movies, but it exists in many derivative games and comics. Not a god in Norse mythology, and Thor seems to be an enemy. In the setting of this book, Kratos' strength is equal to that of the unawakened Thor, who does not hold the artifact hammer, second only to the Hulk. Chapter 195: Evolve into God. Today's Sokka star has completely changed. The main entrance of the Interstellar Stadium is like a big mouth, constantly spitting out dense alien audiences. When they look up, they will definitely be able to see the magnificent night sky of the main city. A fighter turned into a shooting star and flew across the sky, fleeing to the wilderness outside the main city. Behind it, dozens of guard spaceships chased after it, shining lights and engine flames to illuminate the night sky as bright as day. Don't follow me. On one of the large guard spaceships in the middle and rear, Tuanzua was sitting as the co-pilot, watching the fighter plane fleeing at the end of the field of vision, and issued an order with a communication device, close to the attackable range: fire immediately. Okay. The guard spacecraft at the forefront immediately aimed at the tail of the Eagle fighter and continued to fire, and more than a dozen laser beams formed a net to cover forward. Call out. The Eagle fighter seems to have eyes behind its tail. Facing the dense laser cannon fire, it keeps driving at a leisurely speed. At the critical moment, it suddenly flips and slides sideways, and avoids all the laser beams with a beautiful flick of the tail. And also use this to extend the distance of 10 meters again. Thinking it was just a coincidence, the guard spaceship fired continuously again, and the night sky became brighter for a short moment, forming a frightening rain of laser light, covering the area in front of the Eagle fighter plane. SHHHHH, the tail flames of the Eagle fighter jets are so flexible that they are not made of metal machinery through actions such as flipping, climbing, lowering, and side sliding, but it is a living steel falcon itself. The beams of the laser cannons all fell through again, becoming a light curtain to set off the flying figure of the fighter. This is simply a large-scale live broadcast of piloting skills, and the guards who piloted the spaceship to pursue were dumbfounded. Could it be that the fighter pilot is a monster? The guard pilots didn't know that Wisi was in full control of the fighter plane at this time. Wisi and the computer system are connected together to realize the perfect control of the integration of human and machine. Even if the best spaceship pilot in the universe comes, he is still no match for this artificial intelligence mechanical creature. Are you addicted to bombardment? Look at my counterattack. On the main pilot's seat of the fighter, Wisi whispered. A pair of mechanical arms transformed into wires and plugs transmitted electric light, and his thinking was calculated by a supercomputer system to control the fighter to respond quickly. The owner just told it to avoid fighting and to delay the flight at high speed, but it didn't say not to fight back in the face of an attack. Under the fuselage of the Eagle fighter jet, the two muzzles protruded and rotated backwards, aiming at the spaceship group behind the tail and firing directly. The next moment, the two small guard spaceships in front were damaged, turned into 2 rounds of fireballs and crashed down, falling on the garbage mountain in the wild and exploding. What kind of monster is the pilot? Facing the pursuit and bombardment pressure of so many spaceships, he still has the energy to fight back. The pilot of the guard spaceship was startled, and he didn't dare to chase and shoot from the rear without thinking in this way. The speed will inevitably decrease, and the fighters can only keep a certain distance from them. A group of idiots, Tuanzua swears in English, ponders for a moment, and then pays attention to the command. Tell the rest of the guard spaceship still in the main city to stop following this direction and circle around in other directions, forming an enveloping net and slowly shrinking. Time passed by minute. At this time, in the cockpit of the Eagle fighter, Kyle was half on Kratos' body, in a half comatose and half-awake state. His hands tightly grasped Kratos' clothes. No matter how the fighter plane rolled or drifted in the air, it did not leave the opponent for a bit. Protus Gene, ability card reading, the countdown is still going on. 10,000, 9,999, 9,998. It takes 3 hours to extract the purple ability card. This period of time is neither long nor short in the face of enemy attacks. It is undoubtedly a race against death. Relying on the perfect control of the Eagle fighter plane, Weiss really took the guard spaceship around the wilderness of Sokka. Under the continuous high speed and precise driving, Weiss's condition did not decrease, but the guards who had been driving vigilantly for a long time complained secretly. Chase, but can't catch up. Don't chase it, it's impossible. Under such a deadlock of catching up, time dragged on infinitely. Until more than 2 hours later. Weiss still kept a certain distance from the guard spaceship group behind, but soon, it suddenly detected signs of the existence of the spaceship group in front. Weiss was about to adjust his flight direction and escape to the left and right sides, but after scanning the sound waves, he found that there were also large-scale guard spaceships appearing in the areas on the left and right sides. Master, we are completely surrounded. They sent the spaceship to circle the planet in the opposite direction, forming an encirclement net. Weiss issued an urgent report, but Kyle behind him did not respond, and it couldn't help but looked back in surprise. In the cabin, Kyle had loosened Kratos' clothes and was lying unconscious on the floor alone. His brows were tightened, his head was sweating profusely, his handsome face was full of pained expressions, a layer of divine glory appeared on the surface of his perfect human physique, and his body seemed to have a golden flame of nothingness burning fiercely. Kyle is completing the final transformation into a god. If you can peek into the inside, you will be able to see that the genetic structure in his body at this time, which was originally on the verge of collapse due to radiation and recombined super soldier genes, now has a genetic rank code that is hundreds of times more complicated, forcibly and domineering. Remove the faulty gene faults in the body, and reconstruct a perfect gene strip as a whole. The extraordinary changes in the essence of human genes, together with the bones, muscles, blood, and hair of the body, are all being deified simultaneously. As if knowing that this moment is a critical moment, Weiss didn't bother Kyle anymore, and sensed the guarding spaceship fighter planes that surrounded him in all directions. It didn't think too much, and made the most suitable choice by itself. The Eagle fighter plane suddenly raised its head, turned into a rocket and rushed to the sky, and climbed to higher altitude as if fleeing outside the planet. Ha ha ha, they can't escape. Tuzuo laughed wildly, lifted the body of the driver next to him with one hand, threw it back like cargo, and sat on the main driver himself. It was driving a large spaceship, and was the first to chase after it, chasing the fighter plane and heading out of the universe at full speed. On the dome of the dark night sky, an imperceptible small space wormhole quietly opened, and in the blink of an eye, it expanded into a huge dark red hole in the sky. Eagle fighter planes and large spaceships rushed straight up, unfortunately facing the center of the huge sky hole. The storm swept around the cave, forcing the guard spaceships that surrounded the pass to disperse and retreat. And at this moment, in the cabin of the fighter plane, Kyle's body was suspended from the ground, and the silver hair that grew to the shore was flowing again at some point, and his body glowed with a crystal clear brilliance and an aura of harmony with the universe. He calmly opened his eyes, and in his golden pupils, flames were burning and raging. Chapter 196 Vulcan Kyle. Am I a god? Falling from the suspended state to the floor of the cabin, Kyle calmly raised his hands, and under the gaze of his golden pupils, he gently shook his 5 fingers. Before the strength of the body needs to be stored through the muscles, it is naturally concentrated in the palm of the hand. He now has an illusion that he punches with all his strength, and wants to blast a huge hole in the metal plate of the fighter cabin. The power is about 10 times stronger than before. Kyle was shocked. After the perfect human gene, super soldier, is fused with a Protus gene, god, this kind of semi-god or super god can only increase tenfold in strength, which is about 100 times the terrifying value of human beings. What does that mean? It means that with a superhuman grip of more than 10 tons, even a public bus can easily lift it up and throw it 10 meters away like a sandbag. And strength is only one aspect. Physical strength, speed, spirit, vitality, 5 sense perception, physical and energy resistance, etc. are all increased in an overall way. Everything is deified to a superhuman level. Wait a minute, there is another wonderful feeling. Kyle calmed down, and could feel some mysterious power surging in his body, like blood, flowing continuously throughout his body. This should be the power, the divine power, that the Protus has innately mastered. Kyle was thoughtful, his eyes fell on his palm, and he snapped his fingers slightly. A ray of gold and red flame emerged, flickering between his 2 fingers. God flame. This is a change in the nature of his divine power that is revealed to the outside and embodied in the real world. With the Protoss genes in his body, he possesses instincts and freely controls the existence. Kyle suddenly realized that the divine power is a bit like the human mana developed by the supreme mage Gu Yi. However, magic power needs to be suspended to open the inner door of human beings. It is a borrowed power, which can only strengthen the spirit and soul, and will indirectly affect the physical body after reaching a certain level. The divine power is the life force possessed by the gods and creatures, which directly strengthens the spirit and physique of the gods. They can survive in any harsh environment by relying on the gods, and can control the artifacts and hold the original universe stone with the gods. He's equivalent to opening a permanent door in his body, jumping out of the category of ordinary biological races in the universe, and completely stepping into the realm of gods. Now even if Thanos is holding the artifact Infinity Gauntlets and collecting all 6 cosmic rough stones, with a snap of his fingers, he will not be turned into ashes and die within the laws of the universe. I'm really a god now? Vulcan. Kyle stroked his smooth chin, and even he was pleasantly surprised for a moment, as if he was living in a dream. The genetic disease that plagued the lifespan of the body was completely eradicated, and the body also broke through the shackles and evolved to a new field. Become a god with a human body. At the beginning, I resolutely left the earth and chose to set foot in the universe as a helpless move, and finally got an unimaginable huge harvest. It's so dangerous, I almost died in the dual field. Kyle lowered his head, looking at Kratos, who was still unconscious at his feet with lingering fear. Only after he achieved the divine body did he know how powerful creatures like the gods are. Even if Kyle stands still, without the protection of a venom coat, if a special soldier treats him with swords, guns, axes, biochemical poisons, firearms and shells, there will be no possibility of life-threatening. For the Protoss, human beings are already weak creatures like ants, and it is even more difficult to seriously injure them than ascend to the sky. Master, are you awake? The shout from Weiss in the main driver's seat interrupted Kyle's thinking and brought his consciousness back to reality. Weiss, you did a good job. It really dragged you through for 3 hours, Kyle praised. The fighter plane was obviously flying vertically upwards at high speed, and he stood upside down on the deck with the help of his clinging ability. Master, our current situation is not optimistic. We are already in the eye of the large space wormhole, unable to escape, and there is a large spaceship chasing after it. It is constantly using laser bombardment to destroy the fighter plane. While Weiss was reporting, the tail of the fighter plane was accidentally hit by the laser below. The fuselage suddenly lost its balance and trembled violently, and countless instruments flashed red lights for warning. Let's deal with the flies at the back first. Weiss, open the rear cabin for me. Kyle kicked Kratos to a seat, and quickly put on his seat belt, calmly turned around and stepped towards the rear cabin. Kyle walked to the back cabin, and the entire deck of the back cabin was sliding down, revealing the chaotic storm scene in the sky outside. About 20 meters directly below, there is another large spaceship chasing after it like a mad dog. It turned out to be you. Kyle looked forward with radiant eyes, and when he saw the person in the pilot's seat of the large spaceship, his eyes narrowed slightly. At the same time, Carnage, who was driving a large spacecraft in desperate pursuit, also saw Kyle standing on the edge of the rear deck of the fighter plane. Kyle, the former chief's eyes became scarlet, and the dark red thread-like liquid surged from the endocrine, turning into a huge muscle biological shell on the body surface. Soon, it completely transformed into a huge humanoid monster due to its anger, far half as tall and strong as the full venom-covered model. You must die here, Slaughter roared hoarsely, quickly manipulated the driving instruments, adjusted the front laser cannon of the large spaceship, and aimed at the rear cabin of the fighter where Kyle was. Kyle's face was calm, and he just stood there motionless, watching the carnage in the driver's seat indifferently. Die? Die for me. Carnage was frightened, his face twisted wildly. He clapped the fire button with his big hands, milky white energy condensed at the muzzle, and then a blue-white laser beam shot out, rushing straight towards Kyle. At a distance of 20 meters, the laser beam arrived in an instant. It seems that there is no way to avoid it, but in the eyes of Kyle's golden pupil, the laser beam is constantly slowing down, and it looks like a baseball moving at high speed. Although it is still fast, it is not impossible to visually detect the trajectory. At the critical moment, Kyle raised his left hand, a golden red flame ignited on his palm, and aimed at the laser beam falling in front of him. He slapped him. Boom. The laser beam turned abruptly. With a 45-degree offset trajectory to the left, rubbed against the tail of the fighter plane and disappeared. Looking at this scene, Tuzuo couldn't help opening his mouth wide. And his heart was filled with fear again. Block the laser with bare hands? Damn, he's become stronger again. It was about to control the laser cannon of the spaceship, and fired again, but when it looked up, it was horrified to see that Kyle's left arm was already burning with raging flames, and his palm was raised, facing the front. Slaughter. You are me and Venom, the evil product created by the negative consciousness accumulated during World War II on Earth. You are my former comrades in arms and my demon. Kyle watched the slaughter calmly, and said softly in a farewell manner, but World War II on Earth has long since ended. Everything is either frozen, or disappeared in this world forever, so, farewell to the massacre. I hope that in the next life, you will never have anything to do with me again. After Kyle finished speaking, his left palm, which was completely filled with glaring hot flames, was gently pressed down forward, and his 5 fingers twisted slightly. A column of flames shot out, burning and distorting the air where it passed, like a burning dragon hitting the cockpit of a large spaceship. No, don't. Tuzuo opened his eyes wide in horror, looking at the raging flames rushing towards his face. It let out a tragic and sharp scream, and the tall and strong monster body was like a snowman, which began to melt into liquid under the sunlight. Boom. The flames melted the windshield-tempered glass and poured into the cockpit of the large spaceship, sweeping and wreaking havoc. The inner carnage only struggled a little, and the figure quickly disappeared inch by inch. The large spaceship was reduced to a fireball, and it fell straight down with flames and black smoke. Massacre, death. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 197. Leaving Sokka. Cleaning the door with his own hands, Kyle's face was calm, but he couldn't help but let out a sigh. Carnage is a split body of Venom learning his evil ideas, not like Venom, which is a creature from a card. Carnage is not under the control of the creature card rules. If at the beginning of the massacre, he had unilaterally chosen to hide and escape, not to be his enemy, how could he have ended up in today's situation? Kyle turned around and returned to the cockpit of the fighter plane. Weiss's mechanical hands were still inserted in the pilot instrument, and he looked out of the windshield of the fighter plane. He could see that the sky seemed to have opened a hole, and the red lightning flashed in the giant hole. The hole rotated and condensed into a frenzied storm, raging and sweeping around. The fighter plane is in the very center of the hole in the sky, in the frantic storm. Weiss knew that Kyle had solved the trouble at the rear, and reported, "Master, it is obvious that the fighter plane has been unable to break through the scope of the wormhole, then speed up and enter the space-time wormhole. Anyway, the goal has been achieved, and it is meaningless to stay on Sokka," Kyle said calmly, without any memory of Sokka. Although there are still some items, such as the hanging ring, vibrating gold arm guards, energy double guns, etc., they have not been found yet. Not all of the high-tech items entrusted to Lita purchase have arrived. But those are all unimportant. Nothing can compare to the benefit of Protus Gene. If you have a chance in the future, come here again and make a fortune with the Master. It's time to plan to return to Earth. Kyle is looking forward to it. It hasn't been long since he came to Sokka, and the farewell to everyone in the Carl family seems to be yesterday, but going back and forth in and out of the space-time wormhole will consume a lot of time. If you can return to the Earth smoothly, you really don't know how many years have passed. But it doesn't matter how many years have passed after all. The Carl family has infinite equations, and he is already a family of gods. With a life card in his hand, 10 years and 100 years are really irrelevant. Sitting in the co-pilot, Kyle was fastening his seat belt. Weiss reminded, "Please sit still," and then controlled the fighter plane to aim at the center of the wormhole in the sky. The tail engine roared, and the speed increased to the extreme rush away. Crash! Inside the wormhole, sporadic alien garbage kept falling, hitting the front of the fighter, causing the fuselage to tremble slightly. Because I don't have the exact position of the Earth, I can only fly and jump in a fighter plane to ensure a safe passage through the unstable wormhole at the fastest speed. Until now, the energy fuel is almost exhausted, and I hope that the random exit will reach the civilization planet. When Weisi said this, Kyle felt a little bit in his heart, and an ominous premonition arose spontaneously. The fighter plane turned into a stream of light at a high speed, and slammed into the dark red thunderstorm wormhole, and the subtle sense of space-time distortion filled every corner of the cabin. "It started," Weisi whispered, and the fighter suddenly trembled violently. Kyle looked out of the windshield. Countless planets in the star field were blurred and receded, and the universe was in chaos. Jump! 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 The fighter plane kept flying and jumping until the energy fuels instrument index offset fell close to zero, as if it had finally escaped from the passage of the time-space wormhole, and the front of the fighter plane suddenly opened up, showing a vast reddish-brown wilderness. Kakaka! The fighter plane had come to an emergency stop and slowed down, but it was still out of control and crashed into the wilderness at high speed, turning into a bulldozer, leaving a 50-meter-long plow mark on the ground, and finally crashed into a small rocky mountain obliquely, and then turned off and stopped. Weiss, where's this place? Kyle stood up from the co-pilot and glanced out of the windshield. What came into view was a desolate planet. This is, Weiss pulled away from the mechanical arm, glanced at the information on the projection screen, and replied, the cosmic regions that are not on the database should be planets in the star field of human civilization and mysterious unknown regions. What kind of explanation do you say? Kyle twitched his mouth helplessly, turned around and saw a pair of eyes watching him from behind. The two were silent, and their eyes met briefly. Are you awake? Kyle smiled lightly, looking at Kratos, who was half lying on the seat. Now that he is also the god of Vulcan after all, there is no reason to be afraid of seriously injuring the weak god of war. Weiss quickly jumped onto Kyle's shoulder and hid behind the back of his head. Even if it was a mechanical life, the thrilling duel in the dual field still made it fearful of Kratos, even the system program. I didn't expect that I would be defeated by a human in the end. Kratos grinned hard, looked at Kyle calmly and asked, why don't you give me a good time? Because you were useful to me before. But now, whether you are useful or not depends on your choice. Kyle stepped forward, his golden eyes looked down at Kratos, and said in an indifferent but majestic tone, surrender, or die. You only have these two choices. While speaking, a faint golden divine flame emanated from his body. Divine power is the most conspicuous racial symbol of the Protoss. You are also a god. Kratos was taken aback, his eyes rolled round, and he looked at Kyle, whose breath was completely different from before, in disbelief. He quickly shook his head and said, no. Impossible. The previous you are absolutely not Protoss. Forget it. Whether you are Protoss or not, it doesn't matter. Under Kyle's looming threat, Kratos grinned, his eyes condensed with determination, and said with a firm and domineering face, I am the god of war. Although I have already lost, the artifact has been destroyed, and I am suffering from old diseases. Lao Tzu is still a brave and invincible god of war. How can he submit to others? Okay, I already know the answer. Kyle nodded, not intending to waste time convincing. He was just trying it out, and didn't expect too much from it. It is of course great to have a god of war as a subordinate, but if god of war chooses to surrender, is he still god of war? I'll give you a happy one, Kyle said calmly, raised his left hand, put his index finger and middle finger together, and ignited the golden flame fiercely, and the temperature in the fighter cabin instantly increased by more than tens of degrees. Let's do it. In addition, I know the planet you came to, so it's okay to tell you. This is the ancient battlefield between the gods of that old Odin and the powerful race. After Kratos finished speaking, he closed his eyes flatly, waiting for death calmly. In fact, his body was no longer the strength it used to be when he was in the dual field. Just like Kyle before, he fell into the fatal disease of the old war disease. The difference is that Kratos can only go to death at the end of the god of war, while Kyle goes one step further to survive. I want to know, who defeated you as the god of war at your peak, destroyed the artifact, and exiled you to Sakar? Kyle asked. You just need to know one thing, and when they appear in front of you, you will be completely clear. Kratos didn't open his eyes, just said something vaguely, and then fell silent without wanting to say more. Then goodbye, god of war, Kyle whispered, and poked two fingers at the center of Kratos' eyebrows. The flame condensed at the fingertips broke through to the high temperature of the sun's surface at, degrees Celsius. With the power of 100 times human beings, it pierced the forehead and skull of the god. The flames raged inward and swallowed gently, preserving Kratos' body, but destroying everything inside the head. Killing God. The universe chapter is in the middle and late stage, and it will soon connect to the Earth movie plot. Please wait patiently. Chapter 198: The Ancient Battlefield. Kratos' life characteristics disappeared, and he was lying on the seat of the fighter plane with his eyes closed forever. There were only 2 finger-sized burning holes between his eyebrows. No blood flowed out. Nothingness. A generation of god of war ended the curtain and died. After completing the act of killing gods, Kyle calmly withdrew his 2 fingers and waved lightly. The golden flame dissipated from the fingertips, and a few wisps of green smoke slowly dissipated in the cabin. After achieving the divine body, he also realized that Kratos was indeed terminally ill, like a god who is old and senile. Otherwise, with his physique 100 times that of human beings, plus the divine power that is biased towards body protection and blessing power, how could he be in the thousands of tentacles? He was seriously injured. Of course, the power of thousands of tentacles is also undeniably powerful. That consumed all of Kyle's physical strength, and caused Venom to fall into a severe dormancy and a coma. The side effects were huge, and it could only be used as a trump card for the final move, not as a normal mode. "Master, can Kratos' body be handed over to me?" Weiss jumped on Kratos' knee and asked. "What do you want to use it for?" Kyle asked in surprise. "The corpse of a Protoss-like creature is the best experiment. You can try to understand the secret of the source of power in the Protoss bloodline, or transform him into a semi-mechanical creature." Weiss's mechanical eyes continued. "Turn, and emit a red laser light, scanning Kratos' body from top to bottom. It is a mechanical creature born on the basis of semi-intelligent Jarvis." Howard's madness for scientific research seems to be infiltrated in the system program, and he is very interested in everything worth studying. There is no problem with the research, but the matter of transforming it into a man-made weapon is put on hold for now. Kyle nodded and said. He still has a certain respect for Kratos, which is a treatment that all dead enemies have never had before. Kratos is the most difficult opponent Kyle has ever encountered. The opponent knows the secret of his incarnation into a god after World War I, and the two have a clear stand in the duel field. Instead of keeping a god of war who can't give loyalty and is difficult to control, it's better to kill it and finish it all. After Weisi finished preserving Kratos' body in the freezer of the fighter plane, he and Kyle left the cabin and came to a desolate land outside. The energy and fuel of the Eagle fighter was exhausted, and many parts of the fuselage were damaged due to the emergency landing, obviously completely lost the ability to continue interstellar navigation. Kyle drew the card directly, turned the Eagle fighter into a card, and retracted it into the card space. Standing on the hillside and looking around, what caught his eyes was a dead wilderness with no signs of life. There is no green of trees and grass, only brown gravel and dust, more silent and lifeless than the deserts of the Earth. The gravity is 1.2 times that of the Earth, the oxygen composition in the atmosphere is scarce, and the energy of various elements is chaotic. This is not a planet where life is easy to live in, Weiss responded softly. Kyle nodded, agreeing with the statement, but he didn't wear any protective equipment such as a spacesuit, and only changed into casual Earth clothes with a wallet and jeans. But he didn't look uncomfortable at all. The Protoss can survive in any cruel environment, even in the vacuum of the universe. They can still rely on divine power to survive peacefully. It can be said that the Protoss is not the strongest creature in the universe, but it must be one of the most perfectly evolved races in the world. 2 antennas were erected on Weisi's head, a string of garbled codes flashed in the mechanical eyes, and suddenly told Kyle a message that surprised Kyle. Master. On the left side, about 10 kilometers away from here, radio waves have detected to the existence of 2 creatures on a non-living planet. Kyle touched his chin, lifted Weiss on the ground into his hand, jumped down the hill, landed on the flat ground and waved his hand forward. An item card was pulled out quickly, and it fell onto the ground in front of it and turned into a solid body. It was a retro twin-engine motorcycle with a rough and domineering appearance. The metal body had a beautiful arc and a sense of craftsmanship. It was also made by Howard. This was built during the fight against the Hydra with Captain America, but Steve's one had self-destructed during the assault on the Hydra base, and Kyle has kept it in the card space to this day. Kyle straddled the motorcycle, inserted the key to start it, Weiss transformed into mechanical sunglasses and put it on the bridge of his nose, and the navigation route was displayed 3-dimensionally on the inside of the lens, leading directly to the destination of the creature 10 kilometers away. Kyle twisted his wrist quickly, added a few hands of oil, the rear tires of the motorcycle immediately rotated, the engine started thunderously, and a burst of sand and stones was sprayed backwards. The motorcycle was like a runaway wild horse, accelerating towards the wilderness ahead. After a flick and drift, Juchen adjusted his direction and left. A desolate planet without any signs of life, the surface is a dry and dark brown land, and hills lie like graveyards. Boom boom boom. The high-speed motorbike broke the silence suddenly and violently, raising billows of sand and dust across the boundless wilderness. Crack. The wheels crushed some light and brittle things underneath. Kyle frowned slightly, and on the ground moving forward, the dust covered the bones of various unknown creatures. Or a monster skeleton as huge as a hill, or a 5-meter-high human-shaped skull, or a deformed creature with less than half the human skeleton. Most of these bones were buried under the sand and rocks of the earth, and only the tip of the iceberg was exposed. It seems that due to the year-round irrigation of biological blood, even the originally brown land has turned into an eternal dark red. Kratos is right. This is the ancient battlefield where the higher races fought for the sovereignty of the universe. Kyle sighed softly. Only large-scale wars between races in the universe are enough to turn the entire planet into a battlefield, with dead bodies bleeding and drifting for thousands of miles. And now, who is the higher race that rules this universe? The answer is obvious: the heavenly Asgard, the line of the Nordic Protoss. Asgard, Kyle was thinking to himself, and the cursor on the inside of Weiss' sunglasses floated in front of his eyes, reminding him that he was close to the location of the biological body detected by the previous sound wave. The location has arrived. But just 10 seconds ago, the life symbols of the two organisms disappeared at the same time, Weiss reminded. Kyle nodded to express his understanding, and continued to drive the motorcycle forward, and soon stopped in front of two biological corpses facing each other close to each other, and pushed the sunglasses to his forehead in surprise. One of the corpses was a young soldier who was covered in silver armor and held a long sword, resembling a human being, with determination remaining on his blood-stained face. The other corpse was a three-headed monster that was 2 or 3 times stronger and bigger. It stood on 2 feet. Its distorted facial features were extremely ugly, and it held a trident in its thick palm. The weapons of the two pierced each other, completely piercing through each other. Although both had lost their vitality, the blood of each other was still flowing down. It was obvious that the death struggle had been stalemate for a long time, and they finally died together just now. Chapter 199 Thor. It's a step late. Looking at the two corpses of alien creatures nearby, Kyle shrugged helplessly, and soon seemed to notice something, and his eyes unexpectedly fell back on the corpse of the silver-armored soldier. With a slight movement in his mind, several item cards quickly appeared, and the detailed information of the cards appeared in front of him. Ulu Longsword, a longsword mixed with very little Ulu metal blue item card. Wooloo is a metal unique to God's domain. It is hard, malleable, and highly compatible with divine power. This one-handed longsword is mainly made of silver, mixed with a very small amount of black road refining, and the blade is extremely sharp. It can be attached with divine power, greatly improving the ability to kill enemies. Current status: extractable, black armor, armor mixed with very little black metal blue item card. The entire set of armor is mainly made of silver and a very small amount of Yoru metal, which is comfortable and strong after being activated with divine power. A certain amount of physical and elemental resistance can be obtained. Current status: extractable. Made of God's realm, Wooloo, Kyle muttered to himself, and stretched out his left hand forward. After 3 seconds of reading time, the silver long sword stuck in the lower abdomen of the ugly monster disappeared instantly. At the same time, an extra item card had quietly appeared in his hand, with the image of the longsword and information printed on the front. Weiss has long been used to this, and still maintains the shape of sunglasses, hanging on Kyle's forehead, sending radio waves to the surrounding wilderness, searching for all suspicious things. Kyle's movements didn't stop, and he summoned the card in his hand into an entity, and the longsword appeared out of thin air again and was held in his left hand. During the whole process, he didn't take half a step away from the motorcycle. It looked like he was casting a spell of telekinesis. Kyle simply operated his divine power, and the raging flames immediately spread from his arms to the hilt and body of the longsword. However, wrapped in the flames of nearly 1,000 degrees Celsius, not only did the silver longsword show no sign of melting, but all the dirt and blood on it evaporated, and the blade of the longsword became more and more silvery white and translucent. Moreover, the flame embodied by the divine power is naturally attached to the Wooloo longsword. The two are perfectly matched together, as if a certain chemical reaction occurs, turning the seemingly ordinary silver sword into a dazzling flame laser sword. Master, is this an artifact? Even Weiss couldn't help being surprised by this miraculous scene, unable to draw relevant scientific basis and conclusions through his own system data analysis. No. It's just a weapon mixed with a little black metal, and it's far from a divine weapon. Kyle shook his head lightly. His divine power dissipated, and looked at the longsword in his hand, but he was filled with emotion. Just mixing a little bit of Wooloo that fits with a divine power is enough to make the silver sword break away from ordinary products and step into the ranks of blue-grade items. Compared with the Earth's vibrating gold and sodium carbon steel, this Wooloo metal is absolutely no less precious than it is. However, the weapons made by Wooloo can only be used by creatures with divine power. Of course, this is not what Kyle cares most about at the moment. Weiss, we need to expand the scope of our search, and we must find surviving alien creatures, Kyle said in a deep voice with a flash of light in his eyes. The weapons and equipment made by Wooloo are naturally the standard equipment for the soldiers of God's domain, and the appearance of God's domain soldiers on this ancient battlefield proves that this planet still has a close connection with God's domain. Understood. I will maintain the transmission of radio waves and search for all life forms within 10 kilometers, as well as scientific instruments with their own signals, Weiss said. Kyle nodded, started the motorcycle, and continued to drive forward at a high speed after raising a billowing dust wave. Seemingly wandering in the wilderness aimlessly, in fact, Kyle and Weiss are jointly investigating, searching for all suspicious biological signs. After half an hour, Kyle was driving a motorcycle and quickly passed another wilderness of bones. While feeling depressed for nothing, a green cursor suddenly appeared on the inside of the sunglasses. Then Weiss's report sounded, "Master, an abnormality has been detected in one place." "What is abnormal?" "I hope it is a useful intelligence message," Kyle asked quickly. Weiss replied, "The specific situation is not clear. The radio waves I sent approached that place, as if they had received some kind of strong electromagnetic interference. The power source is close to the surface of the Earth, and it is very unstable from time to time. It should not be caused by natural lightning. Navigate me there." Kyle gave instructions decisively without hesitation. After getting the route hint given by Weiss on the lens, he stepped on the ground with his left foot, lifted the motorcycle at high speed, flicked its tail in the air, quickly adjusted the front of the car, and landed towards the left, rush forward without reducing the speed in the side direction. The so-called daring of a skilled person, he is at least a god creature now, and there is no need to be as timid as before in the face of any situation in the outer space of the universe. But for a while, Kyle drove the motorcycle and approached the area guided by Weiss. Before he fully reached the center of the power supply body, he was keenly aware of the fierceness in the air. Boom! The thunderclouds in a small area of the sky were gloomy and uncertain, and there were thunderous roars from time to time. In the dense and loud noise of thunder, there was vaguely the wild and domineering roar of wild beasts. Kyle slowed down the speed of the motorcycle, rushed up a small hill, braked to a stop when he reached the top, retracted the motorcycle to the car space, and lowered his body to hide. He peeked down, and saw a blond young man and a huge creature as large as a small hill facing each other in a field 50 meters away under the hillside. Their bodies were completely out of proportion to each other. The blonde-haired young man has a rough and bold face, and his appearance is almost the same as that of a human. He wears a metal helmet that looks like two horns on his head, and his tall and strong body is dressed in silver armor, and he moves around in a red cloak. All the thunder that fell from the sky hit the young man's body, and the shimmering blue lightning interweaved outside the armor, which became the foil for his majestic figure, like an immortal and invincible Thor. "It's not like. That's Thor." "Oh." The blonde young man swung a small hammer in his hand, spinning it like a windmill at extreme speed, and with a flick forward, it actually drove his body off the ground and flew into the sky. He rushed in front of the huge creature, entwined with lightning, and struck down with a powerful hammer, hitting the head the size of a truck. The huge monster was hammered to the ground with a howl. "Thunder Thor." Kyle blinked, looked at the familiar figure, and was completely shocked at this moment. These days protests gone everywhere. Just killed one, here's another one. And it's still Thor. The role of the hammer is no less than that of his comrade-in-arms Captain America. In the final battle against Thanos in the future, he awakened as the King of Gods, is the only protagonist who can rival Thanos with the Infinite Loves figure. Weiss, I want to find a way to return to Earth? Kyle pondered for a moment, then suddenly smiled and said. How did he get out of the Earth in the first place? The teleportation ability of the Space Stone, across tens of millions of planets in an instant, from the Earth to the Sokka star at the other end of the galaxy and the universe. Although the original Space Stone was lost while traveling through the universe, in the world of Marvel, space teleportation is not the exclusive function of the original Space Stone. For example, the Rainbow Bridge dedicated to Shennai Asgard. How can I borrow the Rainbow Bridge from Soul's house? Kyle squinted, hid on the side of the hillside, looked at Thor, who was holding a hammer and surrounded by thunderlight not far away, and began to conceive and brew his own abacus and plan in his heart. In the fierce battle in the wilderness, Thor was levitating in the air with Thor's hammer, majestic and domineering, and was about to launch an attack on the alien ancient monster that had climbed up again, when suddenly he shuddered, and felt an ominous premonition inexplicably. The following is stuck. Thor, the god of thunder, can be said to be the second important movie character that appears in this book. In order to write it well, I checked a lot of information and wrote it very slowly, please forgive me. The 2 shifts will be resumed tomorrow, and 233 will be gone if we don't resume full attendance this month. Chapter 200. Dig a hole for Thor. The alien creature that fought against Thor looks like a lizard that has grown 100 times its size. It is nearly 8 meters high and 30 meters long, with 3 pairs of black wings covering the sky and the sun on its back. The whole body is tough and thick. Black scales and bumps, short limbs standing on the ground, like a steel fortress stretching across the plain. It's a bit like the evil black dragon described in the Western mythology of the earth, but the whole is much uglier than the myths depicted. With a full blow from Thor's hammer head-on, a small area of scales on the black dragon's head shattered, and a hammer-shaped deep pit collapsed inside, with a sizzling electric light remaining on it, and foul-smelling black blood gushed out from it, descending continuously sprinkled on the ground. But with its huge body, this wound can only be regarded as superficial trauma. The dark red eyes of the black dragon widened due to anger, and the bright red pupils reflected the figure of Thor in front of him, suddenly raised his head and let out a roar towards the sky. Hold head high, the roar of the dragon shakes the wilderness, forming an actual sound wave attack, and the airwaves and sand just explode and sweep out. Even Kyle, who was 50 meters away, felt pain in his eardrums, and couldn't help covering his ears with his hands. If it were any other god, maybe they would really back down. Unfortunately, the alien creature that resembled a black dragon encountered Thor, the god of thunder, and a rough man with various nicknames such as Mangzi and Hammer God. Come on. Who is afraid of who? Soul yelled provocatively at the black dragon, swung the Thor's hammer in his hand, turned into a bolt of blue lightning, and launched an active offensive against a black dragon creature dozens of times bigger than himself. The black dragon was originally one of the overlord creatures on this planet, and it could tolerate the provocations from outsiders. It roared and flapped its wings, its huge body quickly flew into the air, and fought with Soul in close combat. The battle of one god and one ancient creature has just begun. Hiding behind the hillside, Kyle suddenly pulled out a bag of melon seeds, knocked on it, and observed the battle patiently and carefully. Now is not the right time. As for how to borrow Asgard's rainbow bridge, the easiest and most direct way is to make friends with Thor, the son of Odin. So here comes the question, how can we make friends with God in a short time? Kiersey thought about it, and soon came up with a cliched idea. Heroes save the beauty. This trick is not only useful for women, but also very useful for men. He was not a routine Steve at the time, and he succeeded in the routine in one fell swoop. As the saying goes, affection has been unreliable since ancient times, only routines win people's hearts. When Saul is about to die, I will take action and let him owe me a favor, Kyle thought to himself, his eyes never leaving the fierce battle ahead. The lightning electromagnetic field is raging violently, dust and gravel are billowing, and a storm is formed within a radius of 50 meters of the battle situation. Ordinary creatures entering this range will be broken down by gravel or flowing current. Thor and the ancient black dragon looked at the entire universe, and they were both powerful creatures. The battle between the two was several times more tragic than what he saw in the Sokka duel field. Boom! The black dragon was covered in blood, and the more severe the injury, the more wild it became. It twisted its body violently in the low air, and with a flick of its tail, it flew away. Soul, who was nearby like a fly. The helmet shattered, and Thor flew backwards with a grunt of pain. He was thrown 50 meters away like a meteorite, and his head hit the front of the hillside where Kyle was at an unabated speed. The gravel collapsed and sank into the inside of the mountain. Just in case, Kyle still used his stealth skills, turning into a black mist and disappearing from the spot. In less than half a second, Thor rushed out of the mountain as if nothing had happened, his shawl-shaved blonde hair flowing back, domineeringly relying on the Thor's hammer in his hand. He flew close to supersonic speed, and approached the black dragon persistently. He was in the air, and the Thor's hammer held high in his right hand was like a lightning rod. The thunder and lightning roared in the sky, piercing the sky and falling on the Thor's hammer, and the power transmitted to the armor and body was amplified. Thor's electric eyes were threatening, and he reached the sky above the black dragon suspended in the low sky, and swung Thor's hammer from top to bottom. The thunder and lightning pierced through and scorched a pair of wings, and black blood splashed down like rain. The black dragon wailed and screamed, its huge body fell to the ground in the plain, and the ground shook slightly, panting heavily. Thor swung Thor's hammer down, leaving large and small wounds on Heilung Xiaoshen's body. This alien monster is not strong. Seeing the scene where Sol had the upper hand, Kyle threw away the melon seeds in his hand, frowning slightly, and fell into thought. If this continues, Sol will kill the black dragon alone, and there is no room for him to play. In fact, it's not that the black dragon is weak, it's that Sol's strength is too strong. As the son of God King Odin, Thor has the most excellent and pure genetic blood of the Protoss. The embodiment of divine power is the thunder and lightning that represents destruction, plus the divine weapon Thor's hammer, and the increase of natural thunder and lightning. Now let Kyle face Thor head-on. The result will not be much better than the black dragon. It's no way to go on like this. Kyle thought for a while, then suddenly had an idea, and pulled out a creature card. Following the call, a ball of black liquid appeared on the palm of his hand. Venom, have you recovered? Kyle asked, kneading the soft body of the venom with his fingers. The venom didn't respond to the screams and kneading, and seemed to be sleeping quietly like a slime. Master. Its life symbol is too weak. It should be too exhausted in the battle of the dual field. It won't wake up for a while. Even if it wakes up, it will take a certain amount of time to recuperate and recover, Weezy said softly. Kyle looked at the venom on his right hand, hesitated for a moment, then drew out an item card with his left hand, and the card turned into a green bean between his fingers. It's cheaper for you. Kyle felt a little heartbroken, broke the fairy beans into 2 parts, and stuffed half of the beans directly into Venom's body. The next moment, the fairy bean function took effect immediately, and the Venom body squirmed linearly, touching Kyle's arm with countless black thread tentacles, conveying joy to him. Kyle breathed a sigh of relief, glanced at it, and ordered, now, there is one thing you need to do right away. 3 seconds later, on the hillside where Kyle was, a light black shadow slid on the ground, lurking into the battle without anyone noticing. In the battle that is about to end, the black dragon creature lay down on the ground, struggling violently weakly. Sol stood on its head, panting heavily, and raised the blood-stained Thor's hammer. It's over. Thor swung the hammer furiously, and was about to deliver the final blow to the black dragon, but at this moment, the black dragon suddenly opened his eyes wide, stood up like chicken blood, and threw Sol away from the top of his head. Huh? This is... Thor held Thor's hammer to stop his body in the air. In his shocked and puzzled eyes, while the black dragon body below was twitching and trembling, a layer of dark biological armor covered the scarred dragon body. It emerges, forming double surface protection with the scales. The sharp claws and fangs, which were already sharp, were more than 3 meters longer, and they shone with black and cold light. After receiving the evolutionary gain, the black dragon beast's eyes glowed scarlet, and the weak breath of decadence and exhaustion was rising steadily, and soon surpassed the original fixed adult peak, and sent a deafening dragon roar to Sol in the air. The difficulty level is forcibly increased, from difficulty to nightmare mode. There are more today, later. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.